26 of us signed it. And the response was that we needed to be re-educated, we needed to broaden our mindset, and they backed this trans person 150%.
So, Karen, this person who identifies as Rose, on one occasion they were staring at you or your colleagues' breasts in this changing room and asking, are you getting changed yet? Another of your colleagues had a panic attack. I don't think it was you. Is that accurate? That was me. And what do you make of people who call you a TERF or a bigot for complaining about this kind of thing? Because that's what they say. They do, yes, but there's been loads of positivity out there for us. There's loads of positive comments, and I'm not a bigot. I'm not a TERF. I'm just fighting for what's right. I want to feel safe when I get changed. Yeah. There's what's happened to me could have happened to other people, and I want to be a voice for them to stand up and come forward and say this is not acceptable. Karen, you're a brave lady, you and your colleagues, and I'm glad, actually, it was Wes Streeting who intervened in the end, one of the more competent Labour ministers, who told Darlington Hospital, sort this out, you know, pull your finger out, don't be so ridiculous, and he got involved and he sorted it out for you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 26th of June, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So, Labour's welfare war. Is this vote we've been talking about all week, is it going to be delayed until next week?
I can tell him, and I don't need the script. We will go ahead on Tuesday.
Well, but will the Prime Minister water down his welfare reforms bill in the face of huge pressure from his own MPs? Now there's 128 opposing it. Are we facing another U-turn?
And the Prime Minister is currently setting out his trade strategy in Westminster. He's now claiming that the trading environment is not easy. You don't say.
And are we betraying our SAS heroes? MPs demand soldiers who fought the IRA are protected from prosecution. We're going to be joined by SAS veteran Des Powell to discuss this and his new book.
This is a monument, really, to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share.
Well, another victory for President Donald Trump as NATO leaders have agreed to boost defence spending to 5% of GDP by 2035.
Hello? Who's there?
Well, the latest from this government, more nannies state the government may outlaw prime-time alcohol advertisements in their 10-year health plan. There'll be no more of those Colt Cinzano airline adverts like this one.
Suffused with herbs and spices from 4 continents. I'm being boring. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Getting your head down, sweetie. Jolly good idea.
And there's been a private school exodus. Entry requirements are now being lowered as more than 11,000 pupils have left the independent sector after the VAT hike.
And we're going to be joined by the film and TV star Samantha Womack. You may know her better as Samantha Janus, who wants women to better understand their breast density after winning her own battle with cancer.
Canadian film director Denis Villeneuve will direct the next James Bond film. But who would you like to see take the role of 007? Who would you like to be James Bond?
As long as it's a bloke.
I want that... Well, I think it will be a bloke, won't it?
Well, you never know. It's no longer under the control of the Broccoli family.
What, you mean they'll do a Doctor Who on it?
Oh, exactly, and ruin it. Well, I like that guy who was in Happy Valley.
Yeah, me too, that's what I was going to say, but neither of us can remember his name. James Norton.
James Norton.
He would be great.
Handsome, sophisticated, tall. That's what James Bond should be.
Talking of which, here's Lewis Mackenzie with your news.
Good morning. The latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. So Keir Starmer is preparing to back down on his welfare cuts bill in an attempt to head off a rebellion by Labour MPs. Donald Trump claims credit for NATO's new defence spending deal. He says his push for higher contributions led to an extra $700 billion pledge across the alliance.
This is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization.
YouGov's new in-depth poll suggests Reform UK is on track to get the most seats if a general election took place this year. Canadian film director Denis Villeneuve will direct the next James Bond film. He says it's a massive responsibility and describes himself as a die-hard fan since childhood. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. More from me at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom. It's been a long week, hasn't it? Is it only Thursday?
It is only Thursday.
It's been a very busy week as well. Well, thank you for all joining us this week. Now, are we going to see another U-turn from Sir Keir Starmer on this welfare reform bill? And how embarrassing is this going to be?
Well, it's pretty huge because we're now looking at about 125 Labour MPs have signed up to this motion, which actually calls for the entire thing to be paused. It's not saying cut welfare by a bit less money, just wants the whole thing rethought. It comes next week, the vote on Tuesday, just a couple of days before Labour should be celebrating its first anniversary in power. You couldn't time it worse if you tried.
No, you couldn't.
And yet we had the Prime Minister last week at the NATO summit talking about international issues when this huge, huge domestic juggernaut has been heading for number 10.
Yeah.
And it's a really big issue. It'll be one of the biggest revolts ever for a British government.
Well, let's talk to Labour MP for Hartlepool, Jonathan Brash. Jonathan, great to see you. You couldn't want for anything worse, could you, as you near the anniversary of this first term in office for Keir Starmer at this point? A massive rebellion which really plays to the heart of who the Labour Party is and who you stand for.
Well, good morning. Look, from my perspective, I think it's important to set out that welfare does need reform. I think there's nobody in the Labour Party who's suggesting that it doesn't. The bill for welfare has got completely out of control. I think the point that most of the people who signed that amendment, including myself, are making is that this isn't the right way to do it. I think that it's been rushed. I think the consultation on it is actually still open. The only consultation meeting about it in the northeast of England happens today, and the bill was published over a week ago. So pausing, looking again, thinking about how we can improve this is obviously the right thing to do. You know, in Hartlepool, nearly 1,000 people who stand to lose PIP are in work. You know, this is not the whole point of the Green Paper was about getting people off welfare and getting back to work. I'm not convinced how cutting support for people in work already achieves that.
Well, can you explain to people, Jonathan, because a lot of people think that the cuts in welfare are designed to get shirkers, could we perhaps say, my word, not yours, off of benefits and into work. But PIP, Personal Independence Plan, actually supports people who have difficulties and helps them to get to work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, let me be absolutely clear. The government doesn't owe people a living. If you can work, you should work. It is not the job of the state to replace your income if you refuse to work. And I'm very, very clear about that. But you're absolutely right. PIP is not an out-of-work benefit. It was never designed to do that. I have talked to constituents of mine who are in work, and that support they get from government helps them be in work, helps them with mobility, helps them with adaptations that ensure that despite their disability, they can contribute to our workforce and our economy. And they're standing to lose that support. That just doesn't make sense to me. There is a way forward. The way forward is to pause, is to properly co-produce reforms to welfare with disabled groups, with disabled charities and come to a way of making sure that actually we get everybody who can work into work enough benefits and support those who can't.
And I hear that, but there is some suggestions that 1,000 people every day are signing up to PIP. Now, do you really think that's a genuine figure?
I don't know whether it's a genuine figure, but what I would say on that is, look, I agree that that is potentially unsustainable. So why do these reforms target people already on it? If you wanted to try and slow the rate of people going on to PIP, why are you not targeting the reforms at new applicants going forward as just one simple idea? You know, people who are not currently getting the support, you know, playing on a different playing field to everybody else. That would make a lot of sense to me, but that's not what this does. It targets people who are receiving the support and who are in work already. You know, for me, a lot of it is the wrong way around. So much of that green paper is fantastic. The focus on getting people back to work, the £1 billion to help people with training, to upskill them in order to get into the workplace, all of that's great, but it's the wrong way around. We're cutting support first and then adding these things later. That's not the right way to do it. We have to give people the opportunity.
Let's have a listen to what Lord Blunkett was telling another broadcast. Let's just play this if we can. Here we go.
What I do as opposed to what they're going to do. It looks as though they're not going to pull it, although until Friday, Saturday, we won't really know. I would have delayed the vote until September. The timing of the vote is not crucial in anyone's book, and politics involves sometimes just giving a bit of space, talking to people. I know that.
Well, is he right?
Yes. Yes, he is.
Delay it.
Yeah, of course he's right. And I think, you know, I know and I perfectly understand people in your position will talk about U-turns and all of that stuff. And I'm sure...
Well, it would be a U-turn.
Well, I'm sure the opposition will scream U-turn, that it's politically embarrassing and all that sort of stuff. But do you know what? I think actually ordinary people go, do you know what? You've got a group of your own party who aren't happy and you're prepared to sit down, pause, talk to them about how to do it better going forward. That sounds like pretty grown-up politics to me.
And I think you seem like a very grown-up and very sensible man, Jonathan Brash, if you don't mind me saying that. But what it does suggest is that maybe your leader doesn't listen to people, and that is the general sense in the country, that he's blinkered, he's on the global stage, he's more bothered about glad-handing with the global leaders. As he said that time, I prefer to be in Davos than Westminster. And this just plays into it. Even if his own people like you are shouting at him and saying, stop, 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 you've got this wrong. It's no faith. There's no wonder that there's new figures out today that's saying if there was an election now, Nigel Farage's party would win 271 seats. I mean, it's dreadful for the Labour Party.
Look, polling 4 years out from a general election is neither here nor there to me. And I don't agree, actually, that the Prime Minister doesn't listen. I think, you know, we've seen, and I'm sure it was characterised as a U-turn by you, but we've seen on winter fuel and other things that where where a mistake has clearly been made, we've actually changed and listened and adapted. And I think that's the right thing to do. Look, I prefer being in Hartlepool to Westminster. I think most politicians prefer their own constituency and elsewhere to being in Westminster. But the reality is we've got to pause, we've got to think, we've got to listen, and we've got to think again about how we take this forward. And to me, that's not something to be criticised. That's actually something to be celebrated. Compromise, listening, pausing is how we should do policy when things aren't quite the way it should be.
I think the thing that's problematic, and believe me, I was no fan of this previous Conservative government either, is that it was so obvious that Labour were going to win. You had time to get these things, to get the policy developed. You had time, and suddenly every policy seems to be rushed out. VAT on private schools, we're seeing now that so many kids are leaving the private sector. Where's that going to leave the state sector? The farmers are up in arms about the inheritance tax and what's going to happen to them. The pensioners, rethinking it, fair enough. Maybe you could be generous about that as a decision. But it does speak to a country, of a government, that in the hands of which the country doesn't feel very secure.
I think you've got to recognise that, and I know people will scream at their TVs when I say this, but I think if we're all being fair about it, it was one of the most dire inheritances that any government has ever had in its entire life. The welfare system, broken. The NHS waiting lists, out of control. The number of police on our street, not good enough. Asylum and immigration, broken. Every single place you looked in this country, we inherited a broken system. So yeah, after 11 and a bit months, we haven't fixed it all. And yes, it's really, really hard. No one's pretending otherwise. But I think the extent of the damage, and you're right not to be a fan of the last Conservative government, the extent of the damage, I think, is probably the worst legacy of any government in British history. And I think that's what we are wrestling with, and it's not easy.
You say that welfare needs reforming. Can you tell me then how you would reform it? Because we've got a situation where there are more than 9 million people, 9 million economically inactive. How can that be right? And isn't that not the fault of the benefit system, which is making it more advantageous for them to draw benefit than get off their backsides and go to work?
I think, well, you make it the absolute correct point there, that it's the economic inactivity that you have to solve. So what do you need? Well, first of all, you need good jobs for people to go into. Second, you need training. And third, you need to ensure that the benefit system does not incentivize people not being in work. But the point is, this reform doesn't do that. That's the key thing we've got to get our heads around, is that this doesn't make it more likely that people will go into work. It actually probably makes it less likely. So incentivizing work has got to be the way forward. But, you know, I represent a constituency where our education sector, our colleges, have had their funding cut. So people aren't getting the training they need over the last 14 years. That's what you've got to change.
And everything is so expensive. Businesses are finding it so hard. You've got national insurance rises. The hospitality industry will be lucky to make it to the end of 2025. What is the Prime Minister doing about that alone to create jobs in local communities, in pubs and restaurants and cafes?
Well, I think, I mean, you make a fair point about the hospitality sector being difficult. But we've seen this week, just this week, we've seen the government announce that they're going to cut energy bills for energy-intensive industries by 25%. That's a game changer for jobs in my constituency, which are really struggling with energy bills. So there are things that we're doing. We're investing in new industry and technologies. We're investing in things like new nuclear, which I'm hoping Hartlepool is going to play a massive role in the future. So there are things that we are doing to improve the economy and get jobs into places like mine. But as you say, again, going back to our previous point, there are so many challenges on so many fronts. You simply can't solve it all at once.
Can I just ask you a very tiny question at the end, Jonathan? Have they been trying to twist your arm to vote for the package next week? Have you been in to see the Prime Minister or the Chancellor?
I think a lot, like I've had conversations with various people about that, but I think a lot of the characterisation in the press about arm twisting and threats of this and threats of that, I genuinely haven't had any of it. I mean, you have grown-up conversations about your view. You know, I think the Labour Party was very proud to select probably the most talented intake of MPs it ever has, and they're all independently minded and they're all thinking. So it's a grown-up conversation that you have. It's not about arm twisting or threats or anything like that. That's just not the way politics is really done. I think that's for the fiction writers more than anything else. OK. Jonathan, great to see you. Thank you so much. Jonathan Brash there, Labour MP for Hartlepool. A lot of you getting in touch at home. We're going to be looking at those messages in just a moment. We've got to take a break. He's a newish MP and he's going to vote against his own government. He's very good. Unless they change it. Very good. I like him. Now, that bombshell new poll that Bev alluded to, fantastic reading for Reform UK. We're going to bring you all the details up next. And also find out why alcohol adverts could be the latest victim of nanny state Britain. But first of all, let's have a look at the European weather.
Can't wait to get in that sea. Lovely and warm. Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Lots of hot and sunny weather around the Mediterranean at the moment. Temperatures rising again in Spain. Quite a brisk breeze blowing at times over the Canaries. Some fine sunny weather here. A bit breezy too along the Portuguese coast, but a lot of sunshine across much of Iberia, through Italy and across the Greek islands as well. It'll turn a little cooler across the eastern Med as we head into the weekend, but temperatures continuing to rise in Spain and Portugal on Saturday and Sunday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News. the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
And Tom, look what I received this morning.
This is so sweet. Oh!
Isn't that cute? From one of our viewers and listeners. A little, I think it's homemade.
Shall I hold it up?
Yeah, you hold it up. And a little tiny matching hat as well, which is very cute. Goes up here. So there you go, a little matching hat.
Look
and
at
also
that.
a lovely little blanket as well. Wow. This is from Judith from Leeds, who wrote me a lovely little letter, and to Patrick as well, wishing us well, saying that she loves watching our shows, and I hope we enjoy this little outfit. So there you go.
It's like your little baby is with us already.
So yes, Judith, I hope you're watching, because thank you very much indeed. It's really sweet of you to send that to me. It took a little while to get to us, but we've got it this morning, so that's so cute.
It's incredible craftsmanship, actually.
I'll make sure to take a little picture when the baby arrives.
Are you sure your baby isn't going to be French?
It's just something French around it. It's a good thing I like France, so there you go.
Oui, oui.
That's very cute indeed. I just thought I'd say thank you, because it was a really nice surprise this morning.
Yeah, no, it is actually really, really lovely. And it does, I mean...
To bring a tear to your eye, Tom.
Well, we haven't really...
Feeling very emotional.
I was going to say... We haven't really mentioned, your pregnancy in a little while. And
after the big reveal.
You're still with us for a few months more before your due date.
I have to depart, yes.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you've got me for a little longer. We'll see how it goes.
Marvellous
See how
stuff.
it goes. It'll be rolling me in. Before I leave this desk.
It'll be a GB baby.
GB News baby. GB baby.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev at 9:51. We were all very engaged with that conversation we just had there with Labour MP Jonathan Brash. And Nanny...
He didn't duck it, did he?
He didn't duck it. And I have to say, that takes some backbone to come on national TV, particularly this channel, because Labour aren't terribly keen on us. We don't know why. You're always welcome. And as you saw, we gave Jonathan Brash a lovely hearing there.
We did.
But to come on TV and to say, I don't agree with this bill, this massively important bill, shows absolute kahunas. So well done, Jonathan Brash.
And that vote next week will kill the bill.
Yeah.
And then there will have to be a vote of confidence in the government. And who would have expected a confidence vote in a government with a majority of 170 within a year?
Well, Nanny says, morning, Andrew and Bev. Yes, he's only listening, this is Starmer, after each event. He's not for the people. He's a globalist human rights lawyer, and that is what he will always be. Pippa, morning Pippa. Again, Starmer, you want more money to stop illegals sponging off the states, stop the boats, smash the gangs. This is what we voted you in for. Derry says Starmer's vanity is his Achilles heel. And Nigel again, stop the boats, solve 90% of our current and future problems. Labour must go. Bobby, is it true that welfare cuts are due to Reeves creating her own £7 billion black hole caused by her last budget? No, it's a bit more complicated than that. I don't think we can lay the blame of this at the door of Rachel Reeves, but...
Well, she's the Chancellor.
Yeah. Well...
Everything goes through number 11 as well.
Like Jonathan Brash, they inherited an absolute...
They did. But... They see the books before they go in. The idea that it came as a complete surprise is for the birds. But I'm looking at the papers today. Big pictures of Keir Starmer sitting next to Trump at the NATO summit yesterday. Get back, man.
Yeah, no.
Come and sort the country out. His 26th trip overseas, and he's going away again next week. Can't remember where he's going, but he's off on his travels again next week on another summit.
Unbelievable. Personally, I don't mind if he's hanging out with Donald Trump, if he's listening to him and learning from him and maybe taking some inspiration from him, then I'm OK with that, but we can't be sure that's what's happening. nanny statism. Next week, there's going to be a new health plan. Wes Streeting, the health minister, who's going to be talking all about how he's going to save the country, and it's going to be about prevention rather than cure, and I'm very much on board with that.
All good with that.
But let's make sure you create more sports facilities, better food in schools, allow people to exercise where and, you know, let's get the country healthy again. Absolutely. I'm not sure banning booze ads is the solution, Andrew Pearce.
It's pathetic. It's gesture politics, isn't it? You want people to get healthy.
Yeah, but
that's the point.
I don't drink because I see an advert for something.
I like a vodka. I can't remember the last vodka advert I saw. I like a gin. I can't remember the last gin advert I saw.
Exactly. This feels very old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It feels really old-fashioned. We're just going to stop adverts. Well, kids aren't watching adverts. I said to my daughter yesterday, in fact, they've just reminded me, the one who was in here doing work experience yesterday, about adverts, and she said, I don't remember the last time I saw an advert.
There we are.
Because they just flick through them on their phones and... Anyway, right.
Still ahead. It's going to be the wedding of the year. Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, they're the Venice lot. No, they're the
Amazon lot.
3 days of celebrations. We're going to tell you all about it. We think we are.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A bit of a drab start for many out there. It was a warm and humid night across the south. Most of us, though, brightening up through the day with some good spells of sunshine. That rain on the heavy side for parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland. All the cloud and outbreaks of mostly patchy rain across England and Wales continue to work its way eastwards. So Wales, western Scotland turning brighter by lunchtime. Same goes for southwest England and Northern Ireland too. And eastern parts of England taking until this afternoon or evening before we see some good spells of sunshine. Still quite warm here, temperatures getting into the mid-20s, feeling fresher further west, but feeling pretty pleasant in the sunshine. There will still be some showers coming in across western Scotland, particularly into the Highlands. They'll keep going well into the evening, but eastern Scotland turning much brighter by the end of the day, and so much of southern Scotland having a fine evening. Same goes for Northern Ireland, maybe just 1 or 2 showers moving through on the breeze here. Much of England and Wales having a fine end to the day also. We'll lose the cloud and the outbreaks of patchy rain from northern parts of Norfolk by the end of the afternoon into the evening. Later tonight, though, we are looking at more cloud and outbreaks of rain trickling in from the west, fairly light across Wales, southwest England, but some heavier bursts moving into Northern Ireland through the early hours, and they'll turn up in western Scotland by the end of the night. The wind's picking up here. In fact, the breeze generally picking up through the day today, but getting stronger overnight, particularly in the northwest. Quite a warm night, but not as warm, not as uncomfortable as it was last night across the south. Quite a soggy start, though, for western Scotland during Friday. Some heavy bursts of rain on and off across the Highlands throughout the day. Rain on and off, too, for Northern Ireland and parts of northwest England. Some of that rain affecting northwest Wales. Good chunk of East Wales, much of central and eastern England having a fine day tomorrow after a cloudy start and warming up again with temperatures up to 26 or 27 Celsius. Bye for now.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M74 northbound near Junction 13 faces restrictions due to a road incident. Drivers are advised to proceed with caution. The A470 southbound from Upper Boat to Nantgarve closes for maintenance starting at 8 this evening. A broken down vehicle on the A69 eastbound between junctions with the A6085 and the A1 has caused 10-minute delays, with normal traffic expected by 10:13 this morning. In Greater London, a collision on the M4 eastbound exit slip at Junction 4 closes 2 out of 3 lanes, with normal traffic expected by 10:45 this morning. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
But you weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10 a.m, Thursday the 26th of June, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Well, it's turning into a welfare war, and we're wondering, is the vote on welfare cuts next week going to be delayed?
Can tell him, and I don't need the script. We will go ahead on Tuesday.
The Prime Minister does look set to water down his welfare reform bill in face of huge pressure from over 120 MPs. Will you see this as him listening or just another U-turn?
Yes, over 120 Labour MPs forcing this government to U-turn yet again. Is their authority completely shot?
Reform on the up. The first YouGov voting intention poll since the general election just a year ago shows a hung parliament with Reform UK as easily the largest party.
And are we betraying our SAS heroes? MPs are demanding that soldiers who fought the IRA are protected from prosecution. We're going to be joined by SAS veteran Des Powell to discuss this and have a look at his new book.
This is a monument really to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share.
Another victory for President Trump. NATO leaders agree to boost spending to 5% of GDP by 2035.
Hello? Who's there?
Do you want to see adverts like that?
No.
Banned. More nanny state. The government is considering banning primetime alcohol adverts in their 10-year prevention health plan. There are going to be no more Cinzano airline adverts like this one.
Suffused with herbs and spices from 4 continents.
I'm being boring. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Getting your head down, sweetie. Jolly good idea.
Joan Collins. Now, the private school Exeter's entry requirements are going to be lowered now as more than 11,000 pupils have left the private sector after the government's VAT hike.
And we're going to be joined by superb actress Samantha Womack. You might remember her as Samantha Janus originally. She wants us to understand breast cancer better, so stay tuned.
You love the music. The Canadian film director Denis Villeneuve has been confirmed as the next director of the next James Bond film. But who do you want to take on the role? 007.
Those private school pupil numbers, I think, are particularly interesting. We've been waiting to see, haven't we, what impact Bridget Phillipson's, and Rachel Reeves, campaign, their policy, actually, to put tax on private school families was going to, what the implications that were going to be. And we're starting to see it now because, of course, people are giving notice for the next term.
By September, that figure will be closer to 20,000 and higher.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what will that mean? What will it mean for schools in your area? You're going to have an influx of more kids into the state system. Do you have a child? A lot of these children are in these private schools because they have specific learning needs which can't be accommodated in large class sizes. So punishing the working hard again, is it not?
And if you're one of those parents, tell us about your own situation, your own story.
Yeah, gbnews.com/your say. We'd love to hear from you. First, though, a quick news hit with Lewis Mackenzie.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much. Good morning. It's just after 10 o'clock. Here are your latest GB News headlines. Sir Keir Starmer is preparing to water down Labour's flagship welfare reforms to avoid the first Commons defeat of his premiership. 123 Labour MPs have now backed a rebel amendment to block the bill, forcing Downing Street to consider a climb down. The plans include cutting disability benefits and halving universal credit support. Critics warn they could push 250,000 people into poverty. Angela Rayner says the vote will still go ahead on Tuesday. Trade Policy Minister Douglas Alexander says the amendment backed by the rebels shows concern over how the bill will be implemented. He spoke to GB News earlier today.
Striking when you look at the reasoned amendment that's been tabled, that's been signed by more than 120 Labour colleagues, is the degree of commonality, the agreement on the principles. There are obviously genuine concerns in relation to the implementation of those principles, and I expect that those are the discussions that will be happening between members of Parliament and between ministers in the course of the coming days. Nobody wants to see the continuation of the broken welfare system that we inherited from our Conservative predecessors, but it's obviously an issue that is very deep for Labour Party members, for Labour Party members of Parliament, and indeed for those of us within the Labour government, and there's a determination to get that right.
NATO leaders have agreed to ramp up defence spending to 5% of GDP by 2035 after months of pressure from Donald Trump. The US president called it a big win for Europe and the Western civilizations as the summit in The Hague finished.
He said, "You did it, sir, you did it." Well, I don't know if I did it, but I think I did. This will be known as the Hague Defence Commitment, which is pretty good, pretty appropriate. When the Allies reach this number, it will add more than $1 trillion a year. Think of that, $1 trillion per year to our common defense. And this is a monument really to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share. It was quite unfair, actually. But this is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization.
The Reform Party is on track to get the most seats if a general election took place this year. YouGov's first MRP survey since the general election suggests Nigel Farage's party would win the most seats, but not enough to form a majority government. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and Labour would fall below half of the vote share collectively. A 12-year-old boy and 59-year-old man have died in France after being hit by falling trees as violent storms brought dangerous winds and a flash flood. Water gushed down the streets of the capital, trapping cars and forcing Parisians and tourists to run for cover as they were taken by surprise when the deluge hit at the end of another day of extreme heat. Dramatic footage on social media shows the very moment the Eiffel Tower seemingly disappeared behind a curtain of rain and lightning. The UK medical regulator says weight loss and diabetes jabs taken by more than 1 million people in the UK have been linked to a potential serious side effect with some deaths. New figures show the group of drugs that include Mounjaro, Wegovy and Ozempic may be associated with inflammation of the pancreas. According to the regulator, there have been 181 reported cases of acute or chronic pancreatitis linked to Mounjaro. with 5 deaths, with Wegovy and Ozempic being linked to 113 reports of pancreatitis and 1 death. But currently, there is no evidence that the drugs directly record the deaths. London Paddington Station is celebrating 200 years of the modern railway. The event is being marked by the official launch of a touring exhibition train that will travel around the country over the next 12 months, visiting 60 destinations across Great Britain, and will be free to the public to visit. And finally, Denis Villeneuve will direct the next James Bond film. The Canadian film director and 4-time Academy Award nominee says the role is a massive responsibility and describes himself as a die-hard fan since childhood. His previous works include the Dune franchise and Blade Runner 2049. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour's time.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. I tell you what, the story in the paper today about this... do you remember? We were live on air with that guy that killed 14-year-old Daniel Angerin. He was on his way to school, and it was a sword attack by a Spanish-Brazilian national in Hainault. And we were live on air as that was unfolding. And I remember seeing the footage, and it was just the most horrendous footage of this guy rampaging around a housing estate with a massive sword. Well, he was found guilty yesterday, and his cannabis-induced psychosis is basically being blamed on him having murdered Daniel and injured other people. It was a 3-week trial. We're going to be looking at that with our panel in a little while.
And making the point that the Mayor of London, Steve Khan, he's trying to sort out the fact that London's a car park and the council tax is sky high, wants to legalise cannabis. He needs to read the transcript of this court case. Yeah, think again.
He spent loads of time playing on computer games as well, so sort of had a sort of psychosis. Anyway, shall we see what you've been saying at home? The very first Bond movie I watched says Quicksilver was Moonraker in 1979, a tiny town called Sasolburg in South Africa, and then Roger Moore became my favourite Bond.
He was very funny.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? A kind of humour you wouldn't get away with anymore, though. It was a little inappropriate at times, I have to say. Sometimes I do, you know, I'm no prude, you know that, and I'm almost impossible to offend. Right, we're going to go and talk a little bit more about this rebellion by Labour MPs. More than 120 of them are backing this rebel amendment on this welfare bill. Pressure is mounting inside Number 10 to rethink the key disability benefit cuts and delay this vote from Tuesday. Let's get the very latest from our reporter, Adam Cherry in Westminster. Adam.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, pretty extraordinary few days in Westminster. Now, how did we get here, and why are the government now softening their language after insisting that this needed to be pushed through for the sake of the public finances? Well, over 120 MPs, as you said, now signing this reasoned amendment. And that number was actually growing despite the fact that the government and ministers were trying to ring round those MPs and persuade them to back down. If anything, that made things worse. I think the original sin for this and why they are facing such opposition so early is because of the winter fuel allowance, and particularly the U-turn on that decision. Now, once they U-turned on it, the public didn't really give them any credit for making that U-turn. The damage is already done. All it did was prove to the MPs, who are already frustrated at having to defend this policy, that they could back down. And now, with a welfare bill being offered that they also did not promise in the manifesto and is proving unpopular on the doorstep. I think the Times even proved that there are some MPs whose constituents on PIP outnumbers their majority. They're now being asked to defend this as well, and they're saying, do you know what? No, we don't need to do this. We have the numbers. We can resist this, and the winter fuel allowance cut proved that there's the government will back down if there's enough pressure. Don't forget, like I said, talking of majorities, many of them have very slim majorities, and they don't think they're going to get a promotion election. So there's no real incentive, because there's so many of them, there's no real incentive to toe the party line, to be disciplined, because they're just not going to make any headway anyway. So they might as well try and cling on to their seats by resisting all of this stuff, which is, you know, I suppose in their argument, not in Labour's DNA. So on Tuesday, the 1st of July, we're expected to see a highly diluted bill to try and fend off this rebellion. I'm at the press briefing with the Number 10 spokesman in about an hour and a half's time, and we'll ask questions about the progress on that bill, what sort of concessions we can expect to see, and we'll see if indeed it will even land in the Commons on Tuesday. There was some suggestion that it would be pulled, but the most recent language is that they are going to push ahead with it, having listened to the concerns of the MPs. You know, what that means precisely, we don't know yet. There are some rumours, but I will be asking those questions to Number 10 very shortly.
All right, that's Adam Cherry, who's our reporter in Westminster. And of course, we'll have a clear insight into what the government's thinking, because Lucy Powell is the leader of the Commons. She sets the parliamentary timetable. She'll be speaking at 10:30. It's the weekly business questions. She will indicate whether that bill is going to be voted on Tuesday, so we'll know a little sooner.
Never mind the beer ads, says Andy. This is because the government are thinking about banning alcohol advertising, because apparently you're too stupid to know whether you should buy alcohol or not. They need to close the takeaways. When we were kids, we had fish and chips and we had to walk to get them. Now, you just pick up your phone 24/7. You can have pizza, Chinese, curries, takeaways. People don't even cook anymore.
And if I had £1 for every time an MP or councillor said to me, what we're going to do, we're going to stop having takeaways in the vicinity of schools, I'd be a very rich man.
Doesn't matter now, though. You just order it on the phone.
Delivery.
You don't need it.
Scourge of modern life, delivery cycles. And we've been reading in the papers this week, a lot of those are illegal migrants as well.
I don't even know how we row back on that culture, though, now, Andrew. I don't know how we've gone over the edge in terms of delivery food.
I don't know how mums and dads who are struggling with the cost of living crisis can afford it, these takeaways, because it must be more expensive than making your own grub. It's got to be.
So much more. I think it's so much more. I had, the other night, it was just me and the girls in, and I'd had a long week at GBNews, and I thought, right, I'll get a little takeaway. And they wanted a chicken brand. I won't name the chicken brand. So we ordered chicken each, some chips, some side, so a few sides, 3 of us. Wasn't overly greedy or anything. Like, we had a few, and I put the food out when it arrived, and I put it on the table, and it was £82.
What?
It was £82, Andrew, for 3 portions of chicken, maybe 2 or 3 fries, and a couple of extra, like a coleslaw and something else. And I said to my girls, look at that. Look at that. I could have bought you chicken. And it's my own fault. I didn't have a gun to my head. I thought I was treating them.
You could have bought a huge chicken and got 5 dinners for a week out of that.
It's so easy.
Roast chicken, chicken salad,
honestly,
chicken casserole.
Don't. I know, I felt awful. And I didn't tell my mother. She's probably watching this. She'll be appalled to know that I did that.
It was
a very rare treat in our house.
Yeah.
And
I should think so at that price.
And I regretted it straight away. I thought, why have I done that? Why have I fallen for that? And that is the pester power of the kids, though. The kids will pester and pester and pester, and sometimes, as mums and dads, we're just like, oh, fine, just do it. We're so tired. It's like everything just feels quite difficult. Like, life is quite heavy at the moment, it feels.
But it's all part of the obesity crisis as well.
It is.
Because it's not particularly healthy food, it's not particularly nutritious.
Totally.
And, as you say, you used to have to walk to get a takeaway.
Yeah.
And now they deliver it.
And it used to be a treat, and for some families, it is literally a daily delivery.
I tell you what,
and I don't know how we get back from that.
I live in a flat, and I know one of the flat above me, they live on takeaways. I know that because they keep ringing on my doorbell, which is infuriating, because I never order.
Yeah, I have a house near me every single day.
Amazing, isn't it?
And not everybody in that house works, I can tell you that.
I know that. Now, ahead of Armed Forces Day on Saturday, a new campaign is being launched to strengthen our commitment to veterans, which, frankly, is not very good.
That's right. The charity Help for Heroes is unveiling the People's Promise. From mental health to housing and employment, the campaign sets out a clear message.
Our duty to veterans, basically, it says, shouldn't end when the service does. Well, let's speak to the founder of that very important charity, Help for Heroes, Mark Elliott. Mark, good morning. You're very welcome on this programme, because we like to do what we can to support veterans. Frankly, we know the support from the government is not good enough, which is why we have to have charities like you stepping in to help them. We see the veterans begging in the street and sleeping rough.
Well, good morning to both of you. Firstly, you're making me feel very hungry. So that's the first thing. You're absolutely right. It's not lost on me that it's almost 18 years to the day that the idea that a small group of volunteers were going to get together and try and raise £10,000 to help wounded, sick and injured servicemen, because not a lot was being done. And that was 18 years ago. I think it's fair to say that the landscape has changed dramatically for veterans over the past 18 years. And I think that is largely down to the work of Help for Heroes. I often think there are two things, or people say there are two things in life that are certain, and one is taxes, as you've been talking about, and the other is death. But I would like to suggest there's a third, and that's the only people that will look after veterans, those that have served our country and their families, are the incredible British public.
Go on, Mark.
Go on, Bev.
No, I just wanted to know a bit more about the People's Promise. What is that?
I think it goes back, well, I know it goes back to something we said in 2007, Bev, and that's it. We believe the British public do care about veterans. They do absolutely understand the commitment that we do. We go, and our government, and therefore the British public, send our young men and women, your family members, your sons, your daughters, to fight and keep bad people away from your door. And we believe that when they come back, if they're lucky enough to come back, that they should be looked after. And it's quite simple. You know, there are lots of things in life that people make it terribly complicated. It's not. If you are prepared to go and pay the ultimate sacrifice to defend your nation, if you are lucky enough to return, and if you're slightly unlucky and you've had injuries, be that mental or physical, the nation should look after you. And it's really quite simple. And governments, you know, I've lost count of the amount of prime ministers there's been over the past 18 years, let alone when I served, or defence ministers or armed forces. I don't know their names, or they come and they go. It is quite simple. The People's Promise is this nation will look after those that keep bad people away from your door. They're your sons and they're your daughters. They're your grandchildren. They're your aunts. They're your uncles. When people say veterans, it's sort of an unpersonal thing.
Yeah.
These are your family members, and we believe that they should be looked after when they get back.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more, which looks like what, Mark? We're short on time, but if they need a house, they get one. If they need support, they get one.
It's absolutely up. Veterans are not victims. They are incredibly brave young men and women who do stuff that most people don't want to do.
Yeah.
And when they come back, the People's Promise says we will look after them.
Quite right too. Thank you so much, Mark, from Help for Heroes there, the co-founder, Mark Elliott. Come back and see us again soon. We're totally on board and supporting you. Are you hungry, Andrew Pearce?
A little.
We're always hungry here on this show at this time of the day. Well, I've been and got you a little sandwich. It's a strawberry and cream sandwich from Marks and Spencer's.
We are going to taste it in a little time. It's been launched, presumably, in time for Wimbledon.
I thought it was going to look very unappealing when they said we were doing this, but I actually can't wait to get stuck into it. Looks marvellous, doesn't it?
Packaged nicely too. And did they have strawberry lemonade as well?
Yeah, there's all sorts of strawberry things. Hopefully British strawberries from our British farmers. I'm sure they are.
And we got to support Marks once. They had that terrible time with that cyber attack, which was so awful.
So stay tuned to see how we feel about a strawberry sandwich. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Welcome
Welcome to the Bakerloo line, where over the last year, 2 years, every single carriage seems to have been just absolutely covered in graffiti. So we're out this morning to try and do what the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, seemingly can't. Let's clean up the tube. Look, these doors used to be covered in graffiti, but no more. See, it's not impossible.
Not impossible it is, because there is so much that can actually be done. And just a few friends of mine, actually a guy called Joe Reeve, who organised this all, he's from the campaign group Looking for Growth. He got in touch and said, do I want to come? And I was like, absolutely, I bloomin' do. Because I think we can show some pictures of some of our work, which was just on Sunday morning. And it was actually remarkably simple. What we did was we sprayed the graffiti with sort of anti-graffiti spray, eco-friendly anti-graffiti spray, actually, as it is.
I didn't know it was a thing.
A bit of scrubbing, and look, it just comes off. I mean, this stuff is not rocket science. A total lack of imagination, a total unwillingness to do anything about the sort of social decay that we're seeing in our cities and the country at the moment. A laziness, a profound laziness and lack of political will at the heart of the governance of London that means that people are just like, oh, the washing machine's broken, we'll just live with this social decay. Well, no, you don't have to live with the social decay. You can come up with new ways to do things. You can give some people some sponges, some water and some graffiti spray and get that stuff off. It's not impossible. Pull your socks up, Sadiq. Do something about it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Is it nice?
There we are. I'm sharing because I'm that sort of boy. This is Marks and Spencer's strawberry and cream sandwich.
Oh my God!
Red diamond strawberry and cream.
Nice? Is it nice?
Oh my God, it's gorgeous.
I'm glad. Well, thanks
really
very much.
Nice.
It really is.
It's so nice. We're not sharing it with you, Jonathan.
I have to say,
it's proper cream.
Yeah.
that is delicious.
What is it? Cream cheese with cream.
It's sort of slightly sweet. It's almost brioche bread a little bit.
The
kind of cream cheesy. Do you want some, Jonathan?
Oh, I'll have a taste.
With some sort of,
and it's not wildly expensive. £2.80.
Oh, thanks.
Do you know? I want to go and get one. There's a Marks and Spencer's outside here, isn't there? I'm going to go and get one.
There might be some more outside.
Why are they zooming in on you eating?
Thanks, fellas, in the gallery. That's really kind to zoom in on me. It's just what every woman wants is a close-up shot of her eating a flipping cream sandwich.
Well, I think they're on to a winner.
I think that's.
Do you know? I thought it was going to be too sweet, and it isn't too sweet. It's a very nice. If you were having like a glass of champagne, Carol.
Yeah.
Glass of champagne.
Little finger of
picnic. That.
Do you know what Pierce has just done? Can I just show you what Pierce has just done here? He's given me that. Look what he's just given me. A half-eaten halves. It looks like an animal's been at that.
I thought I was just going to have one bite and that was me enough.
You scoffed a lot.
The whole thing.
It's the cream cheese that does it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Piers.
And I tell you what, a lot cheaper than strawberries and cream at Wimbledon.
That may not have worked so well on the radio. I do apologise if you're listening on the radio, but strawberries and cream sandwich, nice. Right.
They're on to a winner.
Should we talk about the news? I need a mouthful of tea with that. Right, Carol. Starmer U-turn benefits. What does it tell us?
Well, OK, it tells us he's finished, basically. I mean, he really is finished. If he gives in on this, he's giving in to the rebels. He has no power at all. His time now is very limited. There are rumours that they're going to try and kick him out next April before the local May elections. But
I think it'd be after if they did.
If he concedes this, this is to these. I mean, last week at this time, there was Downing Street was saying, "No, this is not terribly important. This is just a handful of MPs."
Noise is off, they called it.
Noise is off. It's a handful of MPs who it'll be sorted. Well, it's not sort of, because it's 120 MPs. But now he's going to have to concede to the left on everything from now on. You know, he's going to be beholden to them to save his job. And the fact that he's going to give in tells me that, you know, this hollow husk of a Prime Minister will do anything to cling on to the Premiership, even make himself a prisoner of these rebels. And they're going to get everything now. They're going to push through the Employment Workers Bill. He's going to start getting angry about Israel again, just to appease them, because they now have him in the palm of their hand.
Is that your assessment of the situation, Jonathan?
I think that he's in a very, very difficult position because he has set up a deeply unpopular policy which no real left-wing person could support, which is to take money from some of the poorest and most vulnerable people in society. And I think that he thought it was going to be a popular policy in the sense that he's appealing to the right wing, and the right wing traditionally, you know, in the style of Thatcher, we want the workers and not the shirkers. And so he thought it would be a popular policy with the right, with the sort of the Mail, the Telegraph, etc. So let's just take some money to make work pay, take some money off benefits claimants, and we'll be popular again. But what they fail to understand is that actually a lot of people claim the PIP payments, and a lot of people are disabled. A lot of those people vote Labour, actually. And that's actually not popular, and also just underestimating the extent to which left-wing people or Labour MPs would say, how can we be harder on disabled people than the Conservatives were?
You see, I think he's gone, Carol, I think he's gone for the wrong benefit, because we've got 9 million people economically inactive. A lot of those are shirkers. And they should change the benefit system so it's not so attractive for them to be at home.
I think that is true, but I think we cannot also turn a blind eye to the fact that not everyone who is claiming sickness benefit is unable to work. You have Craig McKinley this morning, the MP, who has 4 prosthetic limbs. Yeah. He got sepsis, all his arms and his leg. He goes to work every day, that guy. Now, I'm not saying everybody can do that, but he can. It's about will, it's about wanting to do it. But you cannot tell me that all the millions of people who are on sickness benefits, they all need to be on it, because they don't. And I thought I admired Starmer for having a go at this and saying to them, you know, we've got to weed out the people who shouldn't really be there. But, you know, it's not going to happen, because Labour, or the left, will always side with benefits.
And as 1,000 people additional a day, Jonathan, are signing up to PIPs, I just find that figure hard to believe. I can't believe they're all genuine. I just don't, I'm afraid.
No. Well, look, there are obviously tests that people have to go through in order to get these payments anyway. And what I think was really unfair was that they basically sort of set an arbitrary eligibility line where they said that people under the age of 21, I think...
Well, they're going to check... I think one of the concessions is they're going to change the requirements.
Look, I agree that we have a crisis of worklessness in this country and that there needs to be ways in which we can get people who can work back to work. And there are a lot of people who actually want to work. Is this a kind of idea that people actually enjoy? So, you know, just getting benefits and they don't want to.
You don't think that is the case with some people?
There may be some people.
It's very naive to think that 9 people
there may be some people, but it's not the
working.
majority.
There's
I don't
always
think it's the majority. And so there are people who actually want it, and those people should be helped. And I think, obviously, there are ways that we can, you know, work on the welfare bill, which is obviously ballooning, as
But
you
you know
say.
what? Even if this welfare
bill
goes through as it is, without any concessions being made, and he is going to make concessions, it's going to be 8 billion more than it was this year, and it's already nearing 300 billion. So it has to be...
It's a very small cut, actually,
yes,
overall picture,
of course, it was 5 billion.
Yeah.
It's nothing. And so even if it's watered down, what's it going to be? A couple of billion? It's just not worth doing, and we have to find a way to cut this bill. You know how many millionaires left this country in the last 18 months? 30,000 millionaires have left. These are the people who pay for benefits, and they've left this country. They've gone. So who do we think's going to pay for them? Someone has to.
Talking of billionaires, shall we talk about Jeff Bezos very quickly getting married?
I wanted to talk about him, like, at length. I can't believe... this wedding is incredible. I'm just so taken by it.
Are you?
Yes.
Tell people why.
Because it's Jeff Bezos has almost taken over the city of
the head of Amazon.
The head of Amazon, yeah. He's marrying a girl called Lauren Sanchez.
Who doesn't wear many clothes.
Who doesn't wear many clothes. She's done something quite amazing to her face. But anyway...
She has.
Yes, she looks a bit weird. So they're now in Venice, and they've shut off streets and canals and whatever, and the locals are protesting because their city is closed off to them. So they're really cross, the locals, the residents. However, the business people there aren't cross, because Bezos is bringing millions into this. This wedding is costing 35 million quid. The flowers alone are costing $1 million. So, and all the food and everything's been sourced locally. So this is bringing massive money into Venice. And it's just...
The protests are remarkable, though, because... do you know what? We will revisit this in the next section, because I want to hear what you have to say about it as well, Jonathan. Because it is all over the social media sites this morning, this wedding. All the celebrities arriving, we're looking at them there. And the protests are about the fact that the locals feel that Amazon has ruined their shops, their economy.
And I'd agree with them.
And I think we would all agree with that, but it's fascinating.
This wedding is another reason for me to never buy anything from Amazon.
Never spend
I thought you were going to say never get married.
I never buy anything from Amazon anyway. Now it's a good reason to never buy.
Jonathan, Carol, thank you so much. Let's get a quick 60-second news update with Lewis Mackenzie. Here he is.
Good morning. The headlines from the GB Newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer is preparing to back down on his welfare cuts bill in an attempt to head off a rebellion by Labour MPs. Donald Trump claims credit for NATO's new defence spending deal. He says his push for higher contributions led to an extra $700 billion pledged across the alliance.
This is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization.
YouGov's new in-depth poll suggests Reform UK is on track to get the most seats if a general election took place this year. Canadian film director Denis Villeneuve will direct the next James Bond film. He says it's a massive responsibility and describes himself as a die-hard fan since childhood. Those are your latest headlines for now. More from me at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Up next, the brilliant, gorgeous, sexy, fabulous Samantha Womack. You might remember her originally as Samantha Janice. Janice, do you remember, Carol?
No, it's Janice, not Janice.
Janice, yeah. She is joining us to talk about a new breast cancer campaign. Don't go anywhere, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A bit of a drab start for many out there. It was a warm and humid night across the south. Most of us, though, brightening up through the day with some good spells of sunshine. That rain on the heavy side for parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland. All the cloud and outbreaks of mostly patchy rain across England and Wales continue to work its way eastwards. So Wales, western Scotland turning brighter by lunchtime. Same goes for southwest England and Northern Ireland too. And eastern parts of England taking until this afternoon or evening before we see some good spells of sunshine. Still quite warm here. Temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Feeling fresher further west, but been pretty pleasant in the sunshine. There will still be some showers coming in across western Scotland, particularly into the Highlands. They'll keep going well into the evening, but eastern Scotland turning much brighter by the end of the day, and so much of southern Scotland having a fine evening. Same goes for Northern Ireland, maybe just one or two showers moving through on the breeze here. Much of England and Wales having a fine end to the day also. We'll lose the cloud and the outbreaks of patchy rain from northern parts of Norfolk by the end of the afternoon into the evening. Later tonight, though, we are looking at more cloud and outbreaks of rain trickling in from the west, fairly light across Wales, southwest England, but some heavier bursts moving into Northern Ireland through the early hours, and they'll turn up in western Scotland by the end of the night. The wind's picking up here. In fact, the breeze generally picking up through the day today, but getting stronger overnight, particularly in the northwest. Quite a warm night, but not as warm, not as uncomfortable as it was last night across the south. Quite a soggy start, though, for western Scotland during Friday. Some heavy bursts of rain on and off across the Highlands throughout the day. Rain on and off, too, for Northern Ireland and parts of northwest England. Some of that rain affecting northwest Wales. Good chunk of East Wales, much of central and eastern England having a fine day tomorrow after a cloudy start and warming up again with temperatures up to 26 or 27 Celsius. Bye for now.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M8 on-slip is closed westbound at junction 10 for roadworks, with a signed diversion in place. The A470 southbound is closed from Upper Boat to Nantgarv between 8 this evening and 6 tomorrow morning for maintenance. A broken-down vehicle on the A69 eastbound in Newcastle upon Tyne has closed one lane, with normal conditions expected soon. In Greater London, 2 lanes on the M4 eastbound exit slip at junction 4 are closed due to an incident, with conditions expected to normalise between 10:45 and 11. And on the trains, cross-country services face delays between Morpeth and Edinburgh. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. So breast cancer is the most common type of cancer in women, with around 11,500 deaths in the UK every year.
One of those people affected by the illness has been the actress Samantha Womack, who you may recognise from the Kingsman film series, Silent Witness, EastEnders and countless other shows. You may know her better, of course, as Samantha Janus.
Morning, Samantha. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you were diagnosed with breast cancer in 2022. You've teamed up with Genesis Care now for their Keep Abreast of Your Breast Density campaign. What's that about?
So, yes, you're correct. I was diagnosed a couple of years ago. I went through a series of treatments, and throughout all of my treatment, I never heard the term dense breasts. In fact, I think 93% of most women don't know what dense breasts are, but it's a really, really crucial way of grading your cancer likelihood. And so you have 4 different grades, A, B, C, D, and D would be extremely dense, which means you've got a lot of fibrous tissue in your breast, which makes it very, very unclear to see tumours on mammograms. And so often you'll have a mammogram and you'll think it's all clear, but actually that's not always the case, because you need to be able to see the tumours on those mammograms. So Genesis Care are now asking women to kind of understand about their breast density. Women who have extremely dense breasts are 6 times more likely to get breast cancer. I was diagnosed before I was 50, so I wasn't due for my NHS mammogram. It was instinctive for me. I didn't have a lump, but I just felt that something wasn't right. And because I followed that intuition and I got checked, that actually changed dramatically my outcome. It was a high grade 3 cancer, and it was already traveling to my lymph nodes. So that was key for me. But what is really important is that we tell women, and it's not just an older woman's disease now. There are many, many young women who are being diagnosed with cancer. It's really important that you just understand what questions to ask. And one of them is what your breast density is, because it will tell you how likely you are to get breast cancer. And also, if you then want to choose to get an MRI, which would be further investigation to see whether there were tumours in a slightly more difficult landscape. And so Genesis Care are now saying that they will offer. They will tell you what your breast density is each time you have a mammogram with them, and that's absolutely key, because then you have a choice in whether you need further investigation.
If we lined up 4 pairs of breasts here, Samantha, and don't worry, Andrew Pierce, I'm not suggesting we do this, but would it be obvious to the naked eye what was a dense breast and what wasn't?
No, so it's basically about the tissue that's inside the breast. It has nothing to do with weight. It has nothing to do with body type. It's to do with fibroglandular tissue that's inside the breast. And some people's are very fibrous, which means that on a mammogram it shows up as white, which is the same color as a tumor.
Right.
So a lot of women, if they've got extremely dense breasts, will get an all-clear mammogram, but it might be because the tumours are actually harder to see. So I'd never heard of the term. I'd never asked those questions. And from my own personal experience, it's incredibly important that we get ourselves checked. And when we do, we know the questions to ask.
And I'm fascinated by you saying that you trusted your instinct when you were diagnosed. You just knew something was wrong. What were the signifiers for you? What were the symptoms, in a way?
It's hard to know, really, because in retrospect, there were no physical symptoms for me. But having spoken to lots of women over the course of the last 2 years, there is this kind of other voice, if you like, a kind of maybe a slight change in your thinking. Before I'd go to bed at night, I'd immediately have a thought, actually, I must go and get myself checked. I wasn't thinking in any particular area, but they were thoughts that kept interrupting my normal thought pattern. And a lot of the women that I've spoken to have agreed with that. It's almost like you have to kind of have the time to listen to your body. And in fact, when I saw my tumor on a screen, when I'd had an ultrasound, my first thought was, there you are. It was as if my brain kind of knew it was trying to find something.
Wow.
And so I am massively, massively passionate about informing women, and men get breast cancer as well, by the way. It's to a lesser degree, but it's still important that we know our bodies, that we're empowered by asking the right questions. And Genesis Care have done all of this research. I mean, it's frightening. 83% of women don't know that a clear mammogram doesn't actually mean that you're cancer-free. And so, it's important stuff.
Is there Samantha, is there a particular age that women should be more aware of this or not?
Well, this is the thing. I'm an avid supporter of the NHS. We know they're completely underfunded. My stepfather was a GP, but they're having to catch up. They haven't got enough money at the moment to be able to change with the rapid rates of cancer increase. And so we're now looking at women under 50 who are being diagnosed with breast cancer. But at the moment, the current age within the NHS, you're called for a mammogram, unless there are any symptoms that you're worried about, would be 50. But actually, women can have mammograms from the age of 40 onwards. Younger than that, it's harder to diagnose because the breast tissue is slightly more precarious. But if you've got any symptoms, go and get it checked up. And if you've got a time to have a mammogram and you want to ask what your breast density is, please do. And as I said, Genesis Care are offering that information to absolutely everyone that has a mammogram. And I think that's key, really.
Fantastic. And you're well now, briefly?
For now, I'm very well. We say cancer-free, but, who knows? I'm no different when I was born on this earth. What do they say? The two things you're sure of are death and taxes. I just don't know when either of them are going to be.
Oh, we can guarantee the taxes, Samantha. We can guarantee that.
That's true.
Thank you so much for joining us. What a joy. Samantha Womack there telling us all about Genesis Care, Keep Abreast of Your Breast Density campaign. She's so gorgeous.
Isn't she? How fabulous. Seen her in so many things.
Yeah, she's a brilliant actress. Right.
Now, up next, bin workers. There's bin strike. We do not apologise for returning to this story. It's now 108 days, and there's a poll now which suggests support for the Labour Party in Birmingham. They run this wretched council has plummeted. You'd be amazed by how few people are willing to support Labour in Birmingham next year.
But if you...
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Lots of hot and sunny weather around the Mediterranean at the moment. Temperatures rising again in Spain. Quite a brisk breeze blowing at times over the Canaries. Some fine sunny weather here, a bit breezy too along the Portuguese coast, but a lot of sunshine across much of Iberia, through Italy and across the Greek islands as well. It'll turn a little cooler across the eastern Med as we head into the weekend, but temperatures continuing to rise in Spain and Portugal on Saturday and Sunday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say. Because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel. 10:49, Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So we're marking 200 years since the birth of the modern railway, which was created in Darlington.
That's right. It's a revolution that began in the northeast of England, travelled all the way down here to London.
Yeah, to celebrate a major exhibition hitting the rails, touring 60 destinations across the country and telling the story of steam and social change. Does that make sense, what I've just read?
Let's speak to the director of the National Railway Museum, Charlotte Kingston. Charlotte, in case that didn't make any sense, why are we celebrating railways? What have they done for this country and what can people look forward to enjoying?
So I think railways are the greatest innovation of modern times, really. I mean, if you think about anything from food, holidays, communications, it's kind of the precursor to the internet because it's the first time you can get a letter in London and then read it in Edinburgh on the same day. It's that sort of birth of that instant communications, and everything from the way we eat to the way we go on holiday to the way we go to work has been shaped by the railways, which started in part in 1825. There were railways that preceded that, but that's the moment we're celebrating today, that 200-year anniversary since 1825.
And the first railway was Darlington and Stockton. It was a steam railway. How many people would have used the trains in those days, Charlotte?
Oh goodness, you're talking very small numbers of people at that time because railways start as a freight industry. It's really only to move coal from the coal field down to where they need to be, to the distribution points. So it's not really until 1825 and then really not until 1830 that you actually start having passengers using railways in any kind of meaningful way. So we are marking this 1825 moment, which is the curators tell me it's the first steam-hauled, fare-paying passenger journey on a public railway. But actually it's not really until 1830 that the railways take off, but it's still a super important milestone in the journey of railways as we know it today.
Some of our viewers and listeners will be watching this, Charlotte, and rolling their eyes and saying, trains are rubbish in this country now. You can't get a signal on them to do your Wi-Fi. There's never anybody working in the cafe to give you a hot cup of tea. They're always late. They're always dirty.
And they're expensive.
And they're expensive.
This is one of the challenges that we have at the National Railway Museum, is that we think railways are brilliant because they have done so many great things for us. I mean, we simply wouldn't live our lives in the way that we live today, and the social and economic impact of railways is often really underestimated. So what we're trying to do at the National Railway Museum, and what we're trying to do with this exhibition train called Inspiration, is to really tell that positive story of the railways. What do the railways ever give to us? What can you do for the railways? What would you maybe like to do in the railways? So thinking about all the different careers, the things that you might know that there are train drivers, drivers and train staff, as you mentioned, but actually there are all sorts of roles that exist behind the scenes in everything from signalling, social media, design, drone operators, safety and security staff. I mean, it's really, really wide-ranging. So this is our kind of moment to showcase all of the good things that railways bring us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. Enjoy your day and the run-up to the celebration of 200 years of railways. That is Charlotte Kingston from the National Railway Museum.
Of course, where I was brought up, Swindon was a railway town.
Is that right?
Yeah, big, and isn't Barbara Brunel big part of the railway revolution?
Birmingham bin strike began 108 days ago. Disputes over pay still ongoing between the council and the bin men. It's been a nightmare for Labour. Let's talk to the Birmingham City Councillor for Sutton Redicat Ward, Richard Parkin. Morning, Richard. We are not letting this story drop because we think it is a diabolical situation for the residents of Birmingham. How are you going to solve it?
Yeah, you're right, absolutely right. It is a diabolical situation, and residents are absolutely sick to death of it. I mean, we've now had actually strikes since January the 6th, so it's not just the last 108 days. The first strike was called way back on January the 6th, and since then we've had no bulky waste collections, no garden waste collections, no recycling, and this Labour administration is the most unpopular administration I can ever remember in all the years I've lived in Birmingham. Residents are fed up, and we can't wait until May 26th with the local elections and we can kick them out.
I saw a poll the other day, Richard, saying only 5% of people in that poll would vote for Labour in the election next year. And that, I imagine, it's not just because the council's bankrupt on Labour's watch, but because of this disgraceful bin strike.
Absolutely. I mean, the only surprising thing about this poll was that 1 in 20 people in Birmingham would still vote for Labour. I haven't met anybody who's got a good word to say about them. Don't forget that just 3 years ago that we were promised a golden decade by the Labour leader, and in fact we have had since then nothing but problems with rubbish piling up. The council is bankrupt. Council tax increases of 17.5% in the last 2 years. And all the time this is happening, our services are being slashed, with libraries closing, community centres closing, street lights have been dimmed. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be an end in strike at the moment. And yeah, as you can see from the images, the situation is pretty dire. And with the weather getting warmer, the smell across parts of Birmingham is absolutely horrendous.
I was going to ask you about that. The smell and the heat, it must be turning into a major health hazard now.
Yeah, well, we actually, as a Conservative group, called for a debate a few months ago to declare a public health emergency, and Labour voted it down. But since then, as the weather's got warmer, I'll give you an example. There's a school in Sutton Coldfield that had no collections for 10 weeks, and eventually bin men came out wearing face masks to remove all the rubbish. And the bags were literally dripping wet. And this is a primary school where children, you know, we talk about health of children and the staff. It's absolutely appalling. And we still don't know how much money the council is throwing at this problem, because they've got agency workers in, but also crews from other local authorities. So where I live, Coventry Council is emptying the bins at the moment, you know, doing their best while the strike drags on.
Thank you so much. We've got a couple of rights of reply to read out. Birmingham City Councillor for the Sutton Redicat Ward. Birmingham City Council say.
Why don't they come on and talk to us? We keep asking them.
We'd love them to. Only 17 workers would lose up to £6,000 and all have been offered alternative roles or redundancy. The council has made a fair and reasonable offer and is awaiting Unite's feedback. The changes are needed to modernise services and avoid further equal pay claims.
A West Midlands Labour source has said Unite, that's the union, choose to go on strike. It's their responsibility. It's time they brought an end to the misery this action has caused for Birmingham residents. I'm sorry, it's the council in charge of the bins. It's their mess, literally. And it really is a stinking mess. Birmingham, let us know if you're living in Birmingham, where you're putting your rubbish. We've even heard somebody telling us somebody's putting their rubbish in their shower.
Goodness.
Believe that? If that's you, we'd love to talk to you. Plenty more to come. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, Text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
To all of you who voted for GB News to win at the Trick Awards for the 3rd year in a row.
So thank you so much for voting for us.
First, and hopefully there'll be a few more to come down the line.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's because of you that we're proud to be the People's Channel. It's because of you that we are Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock on Thursday, the 26th of June, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. So Labour's welfare war continues. Will the vote next week be delayed?
I can tell him, and I don't need the script. We will go ahead on Tuesday.
Well, it looks like the Prime Minister had to water down his welfare reforms in the face of huge pressure or face an extraordinary and unprecedented defeat. So another screeching U-turn.
Reform UK on the up. The first YouGov voting intention poll since the 2024 election shows a hung parliament with Reform UK as the largest party.
Yes, and Labour and the Conservatives, according to this poll, getting less than half the votes between them. Conservatives near extinction level behind the Lib Dems. I'll bring you more shortly.
Hello?
Do you remember those? Ban the booze ads. More nannies state the government's considering outlawing prime-time alcohol advertisements as part of their 10-year health plan, which means there'll be no more of those cult Cinzano airline adverts like this one.
Suffused with herbs and spices from 4 continents. Quite being boring. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Getting your head down, sweetie. Jolly good idea.
And are we betraying our SAS heroes? MPs are demanding that soldiers who fought the IRA are protected from prosecution. We're going to be joined by SAS veteran Des Powell to discuss this and tell us about his new book.
And the exodus from our private school continue. Entry requirements are being lowered because more than 11,000 pupils have already left the private school sector after that 20% VAT hike, thanks to the government.
Canadian film director Denis Villeneuve will direct the next James Bond film. But who should be the new 007?
And we're going to bring you more on that lavish wedding. 3 days it's going to last in Venice for the owner of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and she's called her media personality, his wife, to be Lauren Sanchez.
She's the one who wears very little clothing.
You think with all that money, she could afford to put on more clothes. She's also done something interesting to her face. Women and men are entitled to do that, of course. But the wedding's going to cost around £30 million. And this is the scaled-back version.
The pushback, the protests in Venice are what I think are particularly interesting. What is it about him that is incensing, actually, is infuriating so many people in Venice? And it's not just the fact that he's taking over the whole city, effectively, for a week or more. It's much more about it's about the rise of that sort of industry, that global business, which is ruining and ripping out the heart from the shops in those towns.
And if you went to Venice 10 years ago, there'd have been far more beautiful little privately owned shops and salons and jewelleries. A lot of them are gone because people now get everything from Amazon. I never buy anything from Amazon, and reading more and more about this wedding would put me off ever buying.
Yeah, I can't. I am very reliant on it in a way. We've got to work out that balance, haven't we? We're in a real state of flux at the moment on these issues. GBNews.com/your say. Let us know your thoughts. First, though, quick news headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much. Good morning. It's just after 11 o'clock. Here are your latest GB News headlines. Sir Keir Starmer is preparing to water down Labour's flagship welfare reforms to avoid the first Commons defeat of his premiership. 123 Labour MPs have now backed the rebel amendment to block the bill, forcing Downing Street to consider a climb down. The plans include cutting disability benefits and halving universal credit support. Critics warn this could push 250,000 people into poverty. Angela Rayner says the vote will still go ahead on Tuesday. NATO leaders have agreed to ramp up defence spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, after a month of pressure from Donald Trump. The US president called it a big win for Europe and Western civilization as the summit in The Hague came to an end last night.
He said, "You did it, sir, you did it." Well, I don't know if I did it, but I think I did. This will be known as the Hague Defense Commitment, which is pretty good, pretty appropriate. When the Allies reach this number, it will add more than $1 trillion a year. Think of that, $1 trillion per year to our common defense. And this is a monument really to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share. It was quite unfair, actually. But this is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization.
The director of the CIA says the US strikes last week caused significant damage to Iran's nuclear facilities, setting their program back by years. The US spy agency's director, John Ratcliffe, says the key sites had been destroyed, though he stopped short of declaring that Iran's nuclear program had been eliminated outright. The Reform Party is on track to get the most seats if a general election took place this year. YouGov's first MRP survey since the general election suggests Nigel Farage's party would win the most seats, but not enough to form a majority government. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and Labour would fall below half of the vote share collectively. A manhunt has been launched for 3 prisoners who escaped jail in Buckinghamshire. Jason McDonough, Daniel Harty and Barney Casey all absconded from HMB Springall at 6 p.m. on Monday. The public is being warned not to approach the men. A 12-year-old boy and a 59-year-old man have died in France after being hit by falling trees as a violent storm brought dangerous winds and flash floods across the country. Water gushed down the streets of the capital, trapping cars and forcing locals and tourists to run for cover. Dramatic footage on social media shows the moment the iconic Eiffel Tower seemingly disappeared behind a curtain of rain and lightning. London Paddington Station is celebrating 200 years of modern railway. The event is being marked by the official launch of a touring exhibition train that will travel around the country over the next 12 months, visiting 60 destinations across Great Britain, and will be free for the public to visit. Now, Denis Villeneuve will direct the next James Bond film. The Canadian film director and 4-time Academy Award nominee says the role is a massive responsibility and describes himself as a die-hard fan since childhood. His previous works include the Dune franchise and Blade Runner 2049. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. Finance next.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3748 and 1.1726 euros. The price of gold is at £2,431 and 24 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,731 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev.
And we've got some breaking news because Lucy Powell, who is the leader of the House of Commons, has confirmed at the dispatch box today that big vote on the welfare bill will take place on Tuesday after all. We reported earlier that David Blunkett, the former Labour Home Secretary, I think he was Work and Pension Secretary at one point too, said the vote should be postponed until the autumn to give the government more time to think it through. So what's going to happen now is going to be a screeching U-turn. They're going to have to water down the reforms. And all they were cutting out of a welfare bill of nearly 300 billion was 5 billion. Frankly, peanuts. He's got no grip. U-turn on winter fuel. We think they're going to change the policy. They're going to have to water down the changes to the non-dom tax because so many millionaires are leaving the country. As Karen Malone pointed out just earlier, 30,000 have left since the election.
Yeah. And actually, that story about the number of pupils, I'm just bringing up your comments here, that story about the number of pupils leaving the private system as well.
What's it, 11,000?
11,000 pupils so far, and that will massively increase by September and into January.
Because the VAT only kicks in January.
That's a lot of the kids of these wealthy families.
Yeah.
Because it is the hard-working, successful, ambitious, aspirational families. These are the millionaires who are leaving and going to live in Dubai and Italy and wherever else we've got more favourable tax regimes. Now, you can have an opinion on that, but the fact is they're not here spending their money. They're not spending them in schools, in private schools. They're not spending them in hotels and restaurants and buying houses. They're just gone.
And Peter Mandelson, when he was in Blair's cabinet, he's now our ambassador in Washington, said he was intensely relaxed about the filthy rich, about people being filthy rich. This lot, it seems, are not, because they're targeting them all the time. And the filthy rich create jobs and pay taxes.
Yeah.
You can't lose them.
Right, my computer's not working very well this morning, Andrew.
I can't help you.
I don't know what's happened to it. It's going a little bit crazy.
It's online, I don't do it.
Right.
Moving on. A major new YouGov poll has been released this morning. It's their biggest since the last general election, showing if there were an election to happen next week or tomorrow, Labour would win less than half of the seats they won last year. Reform would be by a long way, the largest party.
The most shocking part of that is that we aren't even a year into this government. It's an extraordinary fall from grace, Catherine Forster. Morning.
Yes, good morning. It really is, isn't it? And I was at the NATO summit in The Hague yesterday with the Prime Minister, and I asked him how confident he is about being able to sort of implement these huge increases to defence spending that go through 10 years from now, and even, to lead his party into the next election. Now, he said he was very confident, but my goodness, managing Donald Trump seems to be easier than managing his own MPs. And looking at this poll out today, it's the first YouGov MRP poll since the general election. Over 11,000 people surveyed in this. The method they use is incredibly detailed and thorough, and it is absolutely catastrophic, this, both for Labour and for the Conservatives, because what it shows is what YouGov says is a meteoric rise for Reform. They would win the most seats, 271. Of course, they would be shy of that magic number of 325 for an overall majority to put Nigel Farage in number 10. But look what's happening to the two big parties for the last 100 years. The Conservatives and Labour, between them, would be on less than half of the vote. On this poll, and of course, 4 years to the next general election, all the usual caveats apply, but Labour would only get 178 seats. They're on 411 now. That's less than half. The Lib Dems would be third on 81, and the Conservatives, thinking things were bad back last summer when they were pretty much decimated down to 121, down to just 49 MPs, almost at sort of extinction level. So no one on this would have a majority. Then, of course, talks of coalition. Even if Reform and the Conservatives somehow manage to overcome their differences. Of course, Nigel Farage has said he doesn't want to do a deal with the Conservatives. He wants to destroy them. On this poll, he looks pretty much on course to do that. They would still then be short of a majority. Now, of course, it's just a poll, but I think the trouble that this Labour government is in after that huge majority just a year ago is really quite incredible. This poll, amongst the others that we've seen, will be striking fear into people at number 10 and also into the Conservatives. We know there's many people now openly questioning Kemi Badenoch's leadership. There was speculation that she might be changed. We know the Conservatives love to change leaders, maybe in a year or so, but I start to wonder whether she might even have that long.
Fascinating, isn't it? And Catherine, just before you go, the government have confirmed that the vote will take place next Tuesday. That's going to happen after all, even though David Blunkett, the former Work and Pension Secretary a long time ago, said they should delay it. So are we expecting a raft of concessions or changes?
There will have to be, won't there? Because if they don't change course, we've got, nearly 130 Labour MPs set to defy the government. We spent 2 days at NATO talking to the PM saying, what are you going to do? Are you going to pull the vote? He would not be drawn. But clearly the vote is down to go ahead. They are going to have to do something, and do something pretty drastic, I suspect. We know they've been on the phone, Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner, trying to talk people round. At the moment, it's not working. In fact, it seems to be going in the opposite direction.
Well, I would think Rachel Reeves would put people off. She must be the most unpopular Chancellor of modern times.
Well, yes, lots of people gunning for her. And I was just a little bit earlier hearing the Prime Minister speak at the British Chambers of Commerce annual conference. He was bigging up Britain, talking about driving growth with planning reform and all the rest of it. No sooner had he gone, but the Director General turned round and said that, the national insurance rise for employers had been absolutely horrendous for businesses, and they felt felt they were wading through treacle, said their central message to the government was, come the budget, there must be no more tax rises on businesses. The Prime Minister told me in The Hague, when I asked him about defence spending, there'll be no tax rises on working people. The government don't have the money to pay for the pledges they are making, and yet they can't even get £5 billion of welfare savings through their own MPs. And bear in mind, the welfare bill is still going up.
It's embarrassing. It's mortifying. Catherine, thank you so much. Now, Britain is marking 200 years since the birth of the modern railway, a revolution that began in the northeast of England but changed the way the world travels, Andrew.
That's right. And I love trains, but they're the most expensive trains in Europe. They're always late and they're dirty.
Let's go full steam ahead enthusiastically to the massive celebration at Paddington Station, just down the road from us here. Let's speak to Mike Lamport, whose family has worked on the London and South Western Railways. Morning, Mike. Why should we be appreciating our railways? As Andrew said, most of the time they're not on time, they're dirty, you can't get a decent cup of tea, and you can't make a phone call.
Yeah, it sounds a bit cliche to me, but anyway, I'm here to celebrate 200 years of railways and the fact that my family has been involved in railways for 179 of those years and still going strong.
What do your family do? Are your family still working the railways, Mike?
Yes, Andrew. My son's a guard at Waterloo, just like his great-great-grandfather was back in the 1860s. I mean, talk about life goes around and comes around.
And I love that, and I think that is absolutely wonderful. But haven't we lost, Mike, the investment in our railways, prioritising them as a means of transport? When you go across to Europe, they've got these beautiful, slick trains, which are very clean, and they basically put us to shame.
I think we did lose our way, yes, but oddly enough, I think there's a very happy happenstance here. The fact that we're celebrating 200 years of railway this year, from 1825 to 2025, has coincided with the beginning of the reunification of the railway here. And I've lived all the way through it, from 1964, when it was dirty old British Railways, right the way through privatisation and all the mistakes and errors of that, and now coming out hopefully much better other side.
Well, let's hope so. We've been in the tunnel, we've been in the train tunnel, we're coming out the other side, Mike. I hope you're right about that, and enjoy all the celebrations, won't you? Thank you so much for joining us. Mike Lamport there, whose family's worked on the railways for generations. I love that.
Yeah, and when we were growing up in Swindon, your dad either worked on the railways or British Leyland.
Yeah. Those days are gone, aren't they?
Everybody's dad did. It was just a given.
We've lost something.
Unless you had a really posh
We've
dad.
really lost something about our identity and our work ethic and our purpose, because so much industry has been decimated. What are the jobs of the future?
That wonderful train, the Flying Scotsman.
Sitting at a desk, tapping on a screen, or, you know, it's tough. I will bring back proper jobs.
Yeah. Now, time for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win £54,321. Tax-free, of course. Here's Hayley Sparks to tell you how you can win it.
This is your chance to enjoy luxury this summer. It's our biggest cash prize to date, an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash has to be won. What would you do with that? With all of that cash, you could just chill out, treat yourself and indulge in the finer things in life. Somewhere like here, Downhall Hotel and Spa. You really could win the cash giveaway of the summer. Go on, treat yourself.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Up next, the excitement and anger building in Venice. These lavish celebrations are going to begin for the Amazon founder, one of the richest men in the world, Jeff Bezos, and his bride-to-be. Would you like to be there, Andrew Pearce?
No.
This is Britain's Newsroom.
Not me at all.
On GB News. Don't go anywhere.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Good afternoon, Britain. A cheerful lollipop man's signature high fives have been stopped in their tracks.
Oh dear. Well, Neil Cotton, believed by local children... sorry. I'll start that all over again. This is a chap called Neil Cotton, and he's beloved by local kids in Howden, East Yorkshire. And he's been told by the council to stop the friendly high-fiving gesture, all in the name of health and safety.
But many parents and motorists are calling it nonsense. No surprises there. So apparently this chap, 57 years old, he spent the last 2 years brightening up the school run in the East Yorkshire town of Howden. There he is. Looks like a nice guy, doesn't he? He has a cheerful attitude. He has his signature high fives. The children love it. The parents love it. He loves it. But no, the council says, get on with your job and stop the high fives.
This is the one area of employment where the council's trying to chivvy people on and get them to work harder rather than less hard. But I mean, what have we done in this country where we've sort of abandoned our sense of whimsy? I think
whimsy.
Adding a sense of whimsy to all jobs, I think, is a fundamental productivity measure. Actually, I think if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're going to be doing it better. People are going to go into school or away from school with a smile on their face. What a joyful thing in a town in Yorkshire. I mean, amazing, brilliant. And yet, no, of course, the clipboards have to come out, and the dour library monitor style individuals. I bet they're all library monitors at school. They've just got to tell people that they can't have fun.
Yeah, so the children have to be shooed along. They can't be distracted by such frivolities as a high five.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Carol Malone, Jonathan Liss in the studio. Do not let Jonathan's presence put you off. Whenever you're on, Jonathan, our inbox goes, why have you got Jonathan Liss on? He drives us mad. It's only your politics, darling. Don't take it personally.
Why do you have to say that on it, and are people going to hate me even more?
No, because they don't. No, because you're smiling at it, so they will realise you've got a thicker skin than they might expect for somebody of your political persuasion.
You've obviously got a thick skin to wear that shirt.
But can I just tell you?
I don't know why you're hating on the shirt.
Can I tell you?
I want a very, very nice shirt, Andrew.
We've both just been out and bought the strawberry sandwiches. Or two each.
Marks and Spencer strawberries.
Well, you can stop.
Their only calories are only...
Shush! What?
How many calories?
290 for the whole
many, is it?
That's not bad at all,
I
is
think
it?
that's perfect.
How much is it, Carol? Do you remember?
I can't...
£2.80.
It wasn't that expensive. Oh, was it? OK.
Yeah.
£2. Right, listen. Carol, I'm the daddy now.
Right. I thought we should... I want to go to...
What?
I want to go to Venice with you.
To what? Venice? Are we going to Venice first of all? OK.
I think we should.
All right, well, we'll go to Venice first, then.
Let's go to Venice. So we did touch on this before in the last section, didn't we, about the Bezos
why are you
wedding.
so fascinated by this?
I'm fascinated
because our viewers and listeners are too.
Because I love lavishness, and I want to live that life. You know, Lauren Sanchez was a journalist, and she
was, yeah.
And she met him because she was going out with some other rich guy, and she met Bezos through that. So I'm just thinking, one day
maybe it's for you, yeah.
Maybe and you, darling. I think you've got more chance than me. You're 20 years younger.
What you got to do, you've got to interview who's the richest man in the world. You could interview Elon Musk. Your whole life could change.
He's got about 35 children.
I think he can afford them.
He doesn't matter.
He's not my type, and I am intensely in love with my boyfriend.
Well, there is that, and me too with my husband. But you know, it would just be nice if someone like that pursued you. Anyway, so
tell us about $1 million on the flowers
$1 million
alone.
on the flowers alone. 35 million they think for the wedding.
Good.
They've already given $3 million quid to Venice, the mayor of Venice, for Venice itself to take care of it. And what they've said is, this is quite sweet, I think. What they've said is to everyone, no presents, but they want everyone.
Buy them a present anyway.
Listen.
I might buy her a new face.
The point of me saying that is, what they've said is, give all the money you have spent on a present to the preservation of Venice,
right?
Which I think is a very good thing.
Idea.
You know, it's a very good idea. So they've done everything that they in their power to not get up people's noses. But the very fact is,
they have.
The fact that they've shut Venice off to residents is not good.
Been to Venice, Jonathan? I've never been. I just think it would be. Is it not smelly and hot?
Honestly, no, I'll tell you what.
in August.
About 10 years ago, I always delayed going to Venice because I thought I should go to Venice when I have the love of my life. And then I got to 29 or 30. I thought, what if I never get the love of my life and I'll have missed Venice? So I went to Venice. I thought it is even better than the height. The way the light hits the water in Venice is something unlike anything I've ever seen before. It is truly magical, and now I go every year. I go to the Venice Biennale every year.
Do you?
Yeah.
But you've got to go when it's not hot, not at the height of summer.
The best time to go is October, November.
Yeah, because August it's too hot, and I'm afraid it gets a bit smelly.
Or spring, yeah. So
and there's a lot of Chinese tourists with selfie sticks who also drive you.
But you know the great thing about Venice is, go to Venice. Here's my tip for you: go to Venice and stay a couple of nights, because Venice is packed during the day, but actually the tourists follow like sort of these pre-arranged routes, and if you just go off a bit off the beaten track, you can find yourself in an empty piazza in the middle of the day, and it's beautiful. And then at night time, go to St Mark's Square and you have the square to yourself after about 11 o'clock.
I had a New Year there once. It was just out of this world.
What else are they doing with this wedding? So they get married on?
So they get married tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they've had to move the venue because there were so many complaints. We're going to get married in a palazzo in the centre of the city. And they've had to move that now a bit further out because there were so many people complaining that the city was going to be literally shut off. They've shut off 3 major canals. I mean, that's like shutting off half the roads in London.
Yeah.
So people can't go up and down the canals. And they've shut off the streets. So it really is getting up people's noses. But I want to see the lavishness of it. I want to see... She's already had about 7 costume changes and she only got there 24 hours ago.
Here's my question for you. Is it possible to spend millions of pounds on a wedding and for it not to be tacky? Because it seems to me
it won't be tacky at all.
The more money you spend on something, sometimes weirdly the cheaper it gets. Sometimes
that's just not true. This is the people who are doing the wedding, or they're Italian royalty. They're wedding planners. It's the same people that did George Clooney and Amal when they got married there in 2014. So it's not tacky at all.
Yeah, I know,
It'll be
but
stunning.
sometimes the more you run out of things to spend money on, and you sort of get gold encrusted napkins, it just becomes sort of tax.
You just didn't listen to what I just said there. It's
I did listen.
Italian royalty that are putting this on.
And what sort of guests will be there?
200 guests,
right.
and it's Oprah, obviously. She gets invited to every wedding on the planet.
Well, who wouldn't want Oprah?
Do they even know her?
I wouldn't want Oprah at my wedding.
I mean, they've got Ivanka Trump there, some of the people, but everyone, it's the rich and the famous.
Are the Kardashians there?
I would doubt that.
The Kardashians will be there.
Do you think?
So,
no, Kim Kardashian's been seen getting off one of the boats.
The reason they are so controversial is that people are saying Amazon employees are paid some of the lowest wages in the world.
Yes. And they pay £0 in tax.
They pay £0 in tax in this country.
Problem with Amazon.
He's worth $230 billion, and he can spend, how much was it on the wedding, Carol? 30 million.
It's a definition of vulture capitalism, Bev.
It really is.
If you're going to be the richest man in the world, then pay your damn employees. Pay taxes.
But that's why he's so rich.
I know that, but it's not necessary. It's just greed. It's the unacceptable face of capitalism.
Because the taxes are all routed through Luxembourg.
Of course. I mean, that was one of the protesters.
Here's a great tweet. Somebody's put here, some 100 private jets will fly to Venice for Jeff Bezos' wedding, and I recycle yoghurt cup lids.
That's quite right. That is so right.
I know.
And actually, one of the groups protesting is a climate change group.
Well, they've got a point.
And they're quite right. to protest. You could see why they're
I've
doing
never heard Carol say that. I've never heard Carol say up a climate change
That's
protesters.
why I was saying what we're doing in this country doesn't matter.
You'd love to go to the wedding.
Oh, you're too right.
Can you imagine the column that come out of it?
I would walk over broken glass either, just because you'd never see the like of it ever again.
And is she going to wear white?
Well, no, she's been to Dolce & Gabbana for a dress.
Right.
And so I'm sure it won't be white. But she's got so many. Every designer in the world is throwing clothes out. That's the problem when you've got loads of money.
I'm wondering if you can put a picture up of this one, because she does look curious.
She's done something
There's something rather challenging
She's
about
done
her
something
face.
rather mad. Do you remember the Bride of Wildenstein?
Yes, I do.
Had so much
Plastic
stuff.
surgery.
Yeah. Well, she's looking
It's
a
just
bit like...
a filler, that's all.
She's
All the
looking
Americans do
like that round the...
No, it's a bit more serious than that. I mean, have you noticed her face?
I have seen her face.
God, are we really going to be too...
I prefer a more natural
look. Get the gays
look.
to comment on the woman's appearance, why don't we?
I can't deny.
He hasn't changed his face. Her face has changed.
Have you seen him, though? He is not an attractive man.
He has... My God, that guy.
She's made him
done
better.
so much stuff at the gym. I don't know if there's been,
We're sorry to interrupt you both, but we're going to go across live to the Prime Minister. Sir Keir Starmer's addressing the House of Commons following his G7 summit. Here he is.
Mr. Speaker, for decades it has been the stated policy of the UK and our allies that Iran must never obtain a nuclear weapon. No one who cares about the security of our country or the future of the Middle East could live with that eventuality. For decades we have worked to prevent it, and on Saturday night the US took a big step towards resolving that threat. Mr. Speaker, there is now a window for peace. We urge Iran and Israel to honour the ceasefire and seize this opportunity to stabilise the region. That is our priority, to get Iran back around the negotiating table with the US. Ultimately, this is how we will ensure a complete, verifiable and irreversible end to Iran's nuclear programme. We're using every diplomatic lever to support this effort, because further instability would pose grave risks to the region and beyond, taking us even further away from freeing the hostages, easing the intolerable suffering of the Palestinians. There is also an opportunity now to push for a ceasefire in Gaza, and we must seize it. Mr. Speaker, I've been discussing this with other leaders, and we will keep pushing to put the region on a better path. Mr. Speaker, I've also spoken to the Emir of Qatar to express our solidarity after Iran's unacceptable attack on the Al Udeid airbase. We took the necessary action to protect British military personnel ahead of that attack, and we will continue to support all our citizens in the region. Mr. Speaker, this crisis has punctured once again the mistaken idea that domestic and foreign policy concerns are separate, and that action in one area is at the expense of the other. The truth is, now more than ever, that international problems rebound on us at home, impacting our security and our economy. Our national security strategy is clear. In this era of radical uncertainty, faced with growing conflicts, state threats, illegal migration, organised crime and terrorism, the only way to respond to these issues is by being strong both at home and on the world stage, by pursuing a foreign policy that answers directly to the concerns of working people. And that is the approach I took to NATO and to the G7. Mr. Speaker, NATO is the most successful military alliance the world has ever known. The cornerstone of our defence for over 75 years. But our duty is not merely to reflect on that success. We must equip the alliance for the future. I've long argued that this is the moment for Europe to make a fundamental shift in posture. That's what the UK has done, delivering the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War, and setting out a landmark shift in our defence and deterrence in the Strategic Defence Review. Yesterday, NATO allies stepped up as well to meet this moment. and create an alliance which is stronger, fairer, and more lethal than ever. Together, we signed a new defence investment pledge of 5% of GDP by 2035, including, for the first time, wider issues of homeland security and national resilience, like protecting our cybersecurity and our energy networks. This is in lockstep with our national security strategy, and we're already investing in these areas. So under NATO's new definitions, we estimate that we will reach at least 4.1% of GDP in 2027, on the way to 5% by 2035. Allies also agreed to review both the balance and the trajectory of these requirements in 2029 to coincide with the scheduled review of NATO's capability requirements, ensuring we keep pace with threats and technologies as they evolve. Mr. Speaker, with this historic commitment, we are continuing our proud tradition of leading in NATO, picking up the torch from Attlee and Bevin. And now, following their lead, we will seize the opportunity created by this moment to align our national security objectives and plans for economic growth, in a way not seen since the 1940s, renewing industrial communities the length and breadth of our country, boosting defence production and innovation. Our investment in Britain's nuclear deterrent alone will support 30,000 high-skilled jobs. And Mr. Speaker, I want to speak directly about our deterrent capability. It has kept this country safe for decades. But we recognise the grim reality today that the nuclear threat is growing. So we are renewing our existing at-sea capability, and we are going still further. I can tell the House today that we will procure at least 12 F-35A fast jets, and we will make them available to bear nuclear weapons if necessary. Mr. Speaker, this marks the return of the Royal Air Force to nuclear deterrence for the first time in 3 decades, the biggest strengthening of our deterrence posture in a generation, keeping our country safe while also supporting 20,000 jobs. The NATO summit sent a message of intent that will be heard around the world. But, Mr. Speaker, this must be joined by renewed support for Ukraine. Because if we let Putin succeed there, the deterrent effect on NATO's new plans would be fatally compromised. So I told President Zelensky at Downing Street on Monday that we will harden our resolve. We struck an agreement together to share battlefield technology, accelerating our support for Ukraine's defence, while boosting British security and British jobs. We committed to providing hundreds more air defence missiles, paid for not by the British taxpayer, but with money from Russia's frozen assets. And together with Europe, Canada, and our Indo-Pacific partners, we announced that we will deliver 40 billion euros of military aid to Ukraine this year, matching last year's pledge in full. There is a path to a just and lasting peace, but it will only come through flipping the pressure onto Putin. His position is weaker than he claims. So I urged all our partners, including the US, to step up the pressure now with more sanctions and more military support to bring Russia to the table to agree an unconditional ceasefire leading to serious negotiations. Let me turn to the G7 summit, where again my priority was to deliver in the national interest. And again I can report some significant progress. Leaders agreed to take decisive action on illegal migration, following the UK's lead in using hard-headed measures like sanctions. We marked an export contract with Canada worth over £500 million, creating jobs here at home. We secured Canada's agreement to ratify Britain's entry to the CPTPP, a trading bloc worth $12 trillion. And we secured President Trump's signature to fully implement our trade deal, which will slash tariffs on British goods. His executive order, Mr. Speaker, will remove aerospace tariffs completely, cut tariffs on cars from 27.5% that British car makers face now to 10% in a matter of days, saving thousands of jobs in the West Midlands and around the country. Mr. Speaker, I've been to Jaguar Land Rover many times now. I've looked those workers in the eye, and I know what this means to them, to their families, and to their whole communities. And that is who I'm representing at summits like this, the working people of Britain. Mr. Speaker, navigating this world requires cool heads. It defies simplistic answers and knee-jerk judgments. We don't pretend we can fix every global problem, but we can carve a unique path through these dangerous times to secure and renew Britain in an era of global instability. That's what our plan for change is all about, putting Britain's national interest first. After years of economic chaos, we've delivered economic stability for the British people. After years of our armed forces being hollowed out, we're building up our military, firing up our industries, leading in NATO, supporting Ukraine, keeping Britain safe. After years of fraying alliances, we're rebuilding them and shaping them to serve the British people. Focused every ounce of our global influence to deliver for working people, to deliver in the national interest. And I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Bednall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement. He has evaded Prime Minister's questions for 2 weeks. Only to come back here to tell us what we already heard on the news. This is a weak statement from a weak Prime Minister, which can be characterised in 2 words: noises off. In his statement, the Prime Minister said, "We urge Iran and Israel to honour the ceasefire." He said, "We are using every diplomatic lever to support this effort." What diplomatic levers? Are they the same levers he's using with his backbench rebels? Is he just asking them to please play nice? Let's be honest, Mr. Speaker. Nobody cares what this Prime Minister thinks, and why should they, when he doesn't even know what he thinks, and clearly no one cares what he thinks because he was not involved. We used to be a strategic player on the global stage, Mr. Speaker, advancing Britain's interests with confidence.
Order. You may not wish to hear the Leader of the Opposition. I do. Can I just say, it doesn't do anybody good in this chamber to try and shout somebody down who's speaking. Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. They can shout as much as they like, but we all know the truth. We used to be a strategic player on the global stage, advancing Britain's interests with confidence, and now we are on the sidelines. Over the last few weeks, historic events unfolded in the Middle East, and at every stage, Britain has been out of step with the US and out of the loop with Israel. Last week, the Prime Minister came back from the G7, insisting that there was nothing that President Trump said that would indicate he was about to get involved in this conflict. Days later, the US launched its attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. He had no idea what was going on. The week before, Israel launched an attack on Iran, and it became apparent that the UK was not even informed about the attack in advance, despite us having been involved in previous preventative action. How is this standing up on the world stage? On Tuesday, the Foreign Secretary, a lawyer, repeatedly could not say whether the US strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities were legal. This is a government that doesn't know what it's doing. Let me make the Conservative position clear, Mr. Speaker. Iran has been a direct threat to the UK for years, plotting terrorism on British soil. It must not get nuclear weapons. And this is a time for Europe to step up, and the UK should be leading. Instead, we have an Attorney General using international law to constrain and restrict the UK, while the Prime Minister hovers indecisively on the sidelines. What we need is a leader. Instead, we have 3 lawyers. Last week, I wrote to the Prime Minister about how this conflict has underscored the folly of the government's £30 billion Chagos surrender deal. The Diego Garcia base is of obvious strategic importance for conflicts in the Middle East. They're shaking their heads. They don't understand. It is obvious. It was used extensively. Diego Garcia was used extensively during the war in Afghanistan, including by the United States. And at Prime Minister's questions, the Prime Minister said that this Chagos surrender had been opposed by our adversaries, Russia, China and Iran. Since then, it has been widely reported that China have offered massive congratulations on the deal and conveyed that it fully supports Mauritius. So can the Prime Minister now admit that he was incorrect to state on the floor of this House that China opposes the Chagos deal? And can he confirm if he still views China as an adversary? Under the terms of his deal, if the US were to launch an attack from the military base on Diego Garcia, we would have to inform the Chinese allied Mauritius government. Will he abandon the deeply flawed surrender deal? Because if not, when will he introduce the legislation setting out the details of the Chagos surrender so Parliament can consider and debate it? We welcome the announcement that the UK will be buying F-35A fighter jets, and I'm pleased that the Labour Party has now moved on from its previous position where it did not support NATO and advocated against the nuclear deterrent. They pretend that it never happened. We have the receipts. Conservatives are proud of exceeding the NATO baseline of 2% of GDP on defence, and we led NATO in getting there. But the government's aspiration to get spending on national security to 5% is just hope. The reality is Labour does not have a plan to get to 3%. It is all smoke and mirrors. And we do not know what the government will spend this extra 1.5% component on. So can the Prime Minister confirm whether this is money that we are already spending or whether there will be any new money? Because so long as this plan remains unfunded, these are just words. Instead of using smoke and mirrors to inflate defence spending, Labour should heed our call to hit 3% by the end of this Parliament with a fully funded plan to get there. You look at the money they claim they're going to save with their welfare bill. 5 billion is nowhere near the tens, if not hundreds of billions that we're going to need to find to meet this defence spending target. And this is the problem, Mr. Speaker. It is one thing to talk about spending money on planes and infrastructure, making announcements about reviews, but it is another to be clear where the money comes from and how it will be spent efficiently to secure the defence of our nation. They can mutter all they like. We all know that they are terrified of doing anything that is even remotely difficult. Mr. Speaker, it is crucial that there is a clear, united front in full support of Ukraine which secures peace on their terms. The stakes could not be higher. We need the government to be leveraging British influence in every way it can for Ukraine. So can he tell us whether he pushed for clearer language in the NATO communique about Russia being the aggressor in this conflict? And can he update us on the UK's current position on Ukraine's accession to NATO, given the absence of detail in this year's communique? We must ensure our leading role continues, but this requires strong leadership and an ability to influence. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, the Prime Minister may have finally returned to this House after a fortnight away, but in truth, he is all at sea. Irrelevant on the world stage, impotent in the face of rising illegal immigration, and now with 126 of his own MPs all openly undermining his authority, his government is incapable of making even the smallest changes to bring down the cost of our ever-expanding welfare bill. There is no way they're going to be able to pay for our defence. This is a government that is paralysed by its own legal advice, paralysed by its rebellious backbenchers, and paralysed by the fear of being found out for having no real vision for this country.
Prime Minister. Can I say to those who were late in, please don't stand. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we live in more volatile times than many of us can remember, with conflicts in many parts of the world that are evolving in a very fast and dangerous way. There's never been a more important time to work with our allies and to be absolutely serious in our response. That response was unserious. Unserious. To suggest at a time like this that the Prime Minister attending the G7 summit and the NATO summit is avoiding PMQs, is unserious. What happened at NATO yesterday was historic. It was very important at a time like this that NATO showed unity and strength with a commitment to the future, not just to the past. That took a huge amount of work with our allies over the last few days and weeks. We have been centrally involved in that, crafting the final outcome, and we were recognised as having done so. I'm proud that we helped put that summit into the right place yesterday, and the world emerged safer as a result. And that was the unanimous view of 32 allies leaving NATO yesterday. For the leader of the opposition to belittle it just shows how irrelevant she and the party opposite are becoming. They used to once be serious about these issues. They used to be capable of cross-party consensus. And all of that is slipping away. We've led on Ukraine, 3 trade deals, and she talks about the prospect of US attack. She must have overlooked the fact that on Tuesday, when I returned from the G7, the first thing I did was go straight into a COBRA meeting to plan for all contingencies, including a possible US attack on Iran. And I'll tell her why I did that, although we did offer a Privy Council briefing, so she knows this. But we have military personnel co-located in nearly all the bases across the Middle East. And therefore, I was extremely concerned to ensure that immediately on my return, I took every step to ensure I had the highest levels of assuredness that we had the preparations in place to keep our people and our assets safe should the need arise. So far from being blindsided, we were planning through last week, we were talking to the Americans, we were put on notice about everything that they did. She simply doesn't understand the nature of the relationship at that level. In relation to Diego Garcia, let me disabuse her. We do not have to give Mauritius advance notice under the treaty. That is absolutely clear. And she talks about defence spend. We are the party that has increased defence spend to the highest level since the Cold War, 2.5%. They talked about it. We did it. Mr. Speaker, she says we don't know where the money is coming from. She was pressed on this in an interview not so long ago, and this was her quote. She said this, Mr. Speaker, we talked about getting to 3% by 2030, and we couldn't make the numbers work, she said. And then she goes on. We need to find a way to make the numbers work. I was intrigued by this interview. I thought she was about to lay it out. Then she goes, quote, this sort of thing requires real thinking. And then she said, let's start looking at what we can do. It's about setting up task forces. Mr. Speaker, that's how unserious they are. She asked about the Ukraine communique. As she will know if she'd actually studied this, the way that NATO works is an iterative process. And therefore, the position on Ukraine has not changed for NATO, and it's not changed under this government. On the contrary, we're recognised as leading on Ukraine, the closest ally of Ukraine, working with them the whole time. That is something I'm proud of. I think it's something the House is proud of, because we have been doing this on a cross-party basis across the House, and the sooner we get back to that, rather than the unserious response of the Leader of the Opposition, the better.
Chair of the First Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornbury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In the year since the election of this Labour government, Britain is back as a force for good on the world stage. Following the outbreak in the Middle East of conflict in the Middle East last week, I was proud to see the Prime Minister lead calls for calm, cool heads and de-escalation. And in its aftermath, we must take seriously the renewed defence commitments that the Prime Minister has made at NATO. But we must also proudly wield the soft convening and convincing power that the UK has in spades. And that is soft power, which has historically been the key to successful diplomatic efforts in Iran, securing the JCPOA, and in the wider Middle East and around the world. Could the Prime Minister confirm what the Foreign Affairs Select Committee has learnt from our conversations with our European allies? It is quite clear that Britain is also quietly and effectively stepping up to lead the fight against Russian disinformation and cyber warfare, and the investment that we will be putting in it will be well spent.
Well, I thank her for her question. She's absolutely right. The need to de-escalate was the central focus into the weekend and out of the weekend, and I'm very pleased that we've reached a ceasefire in relation to the conflict in Iran, and we absolutely need that to hold. She's absolutely right about soft convening power of the United Kingdom. It is an incredible asset that we have, and yes, we are, and I can confirm for her, working with others in relation to Russian disinformation and cyber attacks, which which, as the House knows, are a regular occurrence.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Prime Minister for early sight of his statement. Can I say that Liberal Democrats agree that it would have been wrong to leave an empty chair in front of the Union Jack at the table for the G7 and NATO, and that it's astonishing, and I share his surprise, that it's now Conservative policy not to attend the G7 and NATO. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the Prime Minister signalled retreat on his welfare plans and hope that he will now listen to everyone and not just his backbenchers. On the G7, despite the progress that he outlined, it remains extremely damaging to the world economy that the United States and Donald Trump continues their policy of protectionism. And I wondered if he could update the House, if he had discussions with other G7, indeed NATO colleagues, about how we could persuade President Trump to resign from protectionism. On NATO, the Prime Minister is right that Putin's imperial ambitions present a once-in-a-generation threat to our security. Last week I travelled to Estonia to meet British troops and Estonian leaders, including Prime Minister Mikhail. Estonians have not forgotten the repression enforced by Russian tanks, nor the murder of 4 former Prime Ministers at the hands of the Kremlin. They are under no illusions about the threat posed by Putin, and we must not be either. Yeah. So I welcome his commitment to NATO's new spending target. In the face of Russia's war machine, the British Army remains an essential guarantor of our country's security and that of our allies. And meeting with our incredible troops stationed in Estonia, I was inspired by their skill and professionalism. We need to get more brilliant people like them into the military. So will the Prime Minister consider Liberal Democrat proposals to move more quickly to reverse the Conservatives' cuts to the army and back our new £10,000 bonus for recruits? It's vital we take such measures as Putin continues his barbarism in Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, our commitment to Ukraine's defence must be increased, not reduced. So in addition to the actions he outlined, can the Prime Minister confirm whether he has held more discussions with partners on not just using the interest from the Russian assets, but seizing the frozen Russian assets, so we can bolster our support for Ukraine and pay for a faster increase in defence spending? The Estonians believe they have a plan to deal with all the complications he mentions when I ask him questions about this. So is he prepared to meet me to discuss Estonian ideas to break the backlog so we can seize these assets? The Prime Minister also spoke about the conflicts and crises in the Middle East. He is right to push even harder for a ceasefire in Gaza. People around the world will question whether military action rather than diplomacy will actually make us safer in the future. So we must redouble our efforts for a just peace in the region, and that must include self-determination for the Palestinian people. Yeah. Will the government finally commit to recognising a state for the Palestinians?
Can I thank him for his question? He started by asking whether I'd discussed with other G7 partners the question of the tariffs from the US. Yes, we did. We do frequently discuss trade and the economy and the challenges, frankly, that those tariffs put in place for all economies. And that is the sort of coordination and discussion that goes on all of the time and will continue to do so. On the troops in Estonia, I've visited those troops a number of times myself. They are incredibly brave. They have a real sense of purpose. And I can tell him that at NATO, it was the front-line states on the border with Russia that were leading the charge in relation to the work that we had to do yesterday to renew and take forward the pledges that we make. He asked about reversing the cuts to the army. We will begin the work reversing those cuts. When the party opposite came into government, there were 100,000 in our army. When they left, there were 70,000. I think that's what Ben Wallace meant when he said they'd hollowed out our armed forces. On the question of the assets, and whether they themselves can be seized rather than just using the interest. I have been discussing that with colleagues, as he would expect. It is complicated, as he knows, and there isn't one view, frankly. on this issue amongst colleagues and allies. I'm very happy to see the proposals that he's received from Estonia, I believe, or any others. But it remains complicated, and I have to say allies are in different places on this, but we will continue to discuss it. On a ceasefire in Gaza and recognition, I think it's very important, and we have been pressing the case, particularly in recent days quite urgently and in close collaboration with our colleagues, the E3, Germany, France and the UK, working very closely together at the moment to say this is the moment to press on from Iran to a ceasefire in Gaza. And I mean that should happen in days, not weeks or months. I do think there's a window of opportunity here. I hope that it happens. I can't predict that it will. But I do think that all of us should do all we can to ensure that, along with the ceasefire in Iran, we push to that ceasefire in Gaza. And on the question of recognition, it's long been our party's policy, this government's policy, to recognise Palestine at the right time in the process to bring about the peace. Because I think without a two-state solution, there is little prospect of lasting peace in the region. That remains our policy. Thank you.
Well, we've been listening to the Prime Minister deliver his statement in Parliament following the NATO summit. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's just gone 1 minute past 12 on Thursday, the 26th of June. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Well, the Prime Minister is scrambling to fight back against a major Commons rebellion over welfare cuts. With over 120 Labour MPs in open revolt, are they plotting to bring down this Prime Minister?
Well, the Prime Minister just said in the Commons conversations are ongoing with those rebels. It looks like serious concessions are coming down the track ahead of the vote on Tuesday.
Plus, a bombshell new mega poll puts Reform on course to be the biggest party if a general election were held today. Could Nigel Farage really become the Prime Minister?
Yes, a sea of turquoise on that map. This is a nightmare scenario for both Labour and the Conservatives, who'd be on less than half the total vote. I'll bring you more details shortly.
Hello? Yes, ministers are considering slapping a ban on all alcohol advertising as part of their new health plan. Is this a necessary intervention or nanny statism gone mad?
And GB News can exclusively reveal that an overwhelming majority of Brits back kicking out serious foreign criminals even if they risk torture in their home country, even among Labour and Lib Dem voters.
And Venetians have forced a venue change as protests erupt over Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's luxury celebrations. So why is the